Mama said don't talk to strangers? That's okay. We'll do it for you. Welcome to the Bar Talk Podcast, where we talk to interesting people doing interesting shit. Yeah, turn on, man. Well, welcome.
Oh, I gotta listen to my own voice in these things this whole time.
I can let it down a little bit if you want.
No, it's alright. It's just typical comedian mindset. Not a huge fan of yourself usually.
Do you ever watch your footage back?
Yeah, I will tape or just record audio mostly. Thank you. And it's important when you're writing to be able to listen back because, I mean, you're into comedy, so you would know. But at times, like just one word can really make a huge difference in a joke or how it comes across. And yeah, it's nice to be able to listen to that back and like catch it.
Yeah.
And then the next time you try it, kind of slide that in there and really kind of improve things. And it's interesting to watch a joke grow and get to its final destination.
Yeah, for sure.
And how it got there. And sometimes there's quite a few changes. And at times it's just that odd word you were looking for and you didn't know you were looking for it, but it makes everything so much better.
And then the visual part, like the mannerisms can be such a big part of it too.
It can be.
So like listening to yourself is one thing, but then watching video back is like a whole other.
For sure.
Whole other life.
Especially from like when you're first starting out to maybe wherever you end up getting to. You always feel cringy about the earlier stuff for sure. But just that like comfort level on stage and stuff. We're getting right in the nitty gritty already. But.
I know. I hate editing because I usually edit. Ben does it once in a while, but I usually edit these. And part of that is to force myself to watch it and learn from it.
Yeah.
It's hard to listen to yourself a lot of the time because you don't know what you sound like until you do this.
Yeah, you don't.
No,
it's... I've been listening to myself for a while now since I started doing stand-up, and it was shocking what my voice sounded like. I didn't realize.
Not a lot of people know, but I went to Bible college. I was a preacher for 10 years.
Okay.
So I had all these homiletics courses, and you had to like record yourself and then watch it back, and then your classmates would tear you apart, like on purpose,
preacher style.
Oh, yeah. Just like everybody did at the kitchen table after church, tear apart the preacher. But that was intimidating. I remember staying up all night to write my sermon and then totally just skip class because I was too scared to do it the first time.
It's hard. Like there's a reason that's some people's biggest fear. It's not easy.
Well, Jerry Seinfeld has a joke. He said, more people are afraid of public speaking than death, which means if they're at a funeral, they'd rather be in the box than the pulpit.
Absolutely. Well, it's true. Like people are terrified of it.
Yeah.
And
there's the theory I've heard that if the reason people are scared is because like way back in hunter-gathering times, if you were speaking in front of a crowd, it meant that you were on trial for something. Like you were being accused of something, and like all the eyes and the pressure was on you, and it was up to you to like defend yourself. Yeah. Sometimes from death, like a capital punishment or something. Who knows? But
that'd be a good reason to be afraid.
That'd be a good reason,
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having your life in someone else's hands is never fun.
Now it's like book reports.
Yeah. Which is slightly less on the line, but still.
Slightly less on the line.
Still terrifying.
Do they even do that stuff in school with kids these days?
I don't know. I have kids, but they're not like in that level of school yet. They're younger.
I think they do because there was that whole thing with like people getting their book reports done by ChatGPT.
But do they actually present them? That's what I'm wondering. Because the social skills of kids today
are probably not
what they used to be.
No, probably because they don't have to be.
Yeah.
That's interesting too. Like just we all grew up in different times, but then raising kids in this era of technology, even though I grew up with some technology, it was at a completely different state. So I just got to figure out how I'm going to approach that as my kids get older and into that stage. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, the world is changing so fast. They don't even have to write it because ChatGPT does it, and they don't have to present it.
Sure.
They don't have to write it in cursive because they don't know how.
And just constant access to everything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I used to have to call my friend's landline.
Yeah.
This was not that long ago. Like, I'm not, to see if they could come out to play, or you take a chance and like go to their house and knock on their door. And
you have to talk to their parents on the phone or something.
Sure. Yeah. And then, well, that's a prime example. Like, I can't, we had to talk to our friend's parents.
Yeah. Or if you liked a girl. And you had her number. You had to talk to her mom or her dad, even scarier, her dad or her big brother first. Like, that's scary. Kids now, they just
avoid it
message.
All.
You can Snapchat that and it disappears. Yeah. Can you imagine having to Snapchat mom first, kids? Like that would be terrifying.
What you had to do back in the day was you had to sort of get an idea of the person's schedule and try and time your call, right? So that you knew who was going to answer it.
And there's another phone in that house that somebody could always be on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And if they say, no, she's busy, and you do that like 3 times, like you got to really wonder, is this bad luck? Or are they lying to me?
Yeah.
Like what's going on?
And you genuinely can't know.
You don't know.
No, you just got to hang out in the unknown.
Now, if it says red and there's no response, you start to clue in.
I liked it better when I didn't know.
Your ego could handle it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she really is just washing her hair again. She's a very cleanly lady.
Yeah. That's why you liked her in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, the world's changed. How old are your kids?
They are 8, 6, and 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8, 6, and 4.
Yeah, you need to know that stuff.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
They're not probably going to listen yet, but you need to keep those numbers
down.
down.
No. They're busy. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And but I've definitely, that has been on my mind for sure, seeing, like, because I've done a lot of coaching in sports. Yeah. And so I know kids now that I coached when they were 11 or 12 and they're now 18, 19.
Yeah.
And just watching, just seeing how they've grown in those teen years into kind of adulthood. And it's like, oh yeah, that was a different ball game than when I went through it.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be different when my kids go through it, and I'm going to have to be a part of that as well, obviously. Yeah. So it'll be interesting.
2-year gaps is pretty close too. It's pretty close.
Yeah, we got it done.
Yeah. I got 3 as well, and they're 3 years apart.
Okay. I like that gap.
22, 19, and 15, almost 16. So
completely different.
Spreads it out a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's nice that they're, I think, close in age. My wife had 3 other siblings, and all close in age. And now seeing them as adults interact in the relationship they have is really cool. And I'm hopeful for my kids to be able to want to hang out with each other and be friends when they're adults.
Yeah.
It's a cool dynamic to see. So I'm excited about that age gap.
Yeah, it's nothing like family. But I changed diapers like 9 years straight. It was ridiculous.
It's a long haul.
Yeah, you just get one done, and it's like, oh, here comes another one.
You don't realize, like, the no sleep in the diapers. Yeah. It's like that stage. You don't realize. You're making your way through, of course.
I came right out of college and into babies, so I'd never learned to sleep.
Yeah, I was similar. Like, I think I was 23 when we found out that we were pregnant with our first, and so that you grow up quick. Yeah. And it takes some time, but then now I'm 33 and I feel like I'm 45, but that's all right.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like Ben has a 3-year-old.
Yep. So
you and your wife both work like part-time and have a baby, and not a baby, but a preschooler, and it's a lot of work. And we were saying, like, some people do that. There's single parents that do that with multiple kids.
I don't know
and work, and I don't. Shout out to the single parents, because that's
a tough gig. Yeah, it's tough with you and your partner. Like, and I can't imagine single parents or parents without, like, family support nearby. Yeah. Like, my in-laws are down the road. They live on the farm with us. Not in the same house, a couple of kilometers down the road. But, they, for a long time, just, like, their support allowed us to have a semblance of a social life and still do things that made us who we are as individuals, which I think as a parent's important to still do that. And it's important for you and important for your kids to see that their parents are people.
And that used to be the way, like, a very common thing. Like, families would live on the same farm, like, multiple generations, like 3 or 4 generations. Like, the property I grew up to was 4 generations on just right within 3 houses. It was great.
Yeah, I didn't grow up rurally, but I'm seeing that now that I live here. There's a lot, it's just the valley's got a lot of the same last names strewn about, and you can kind of picture what it was like. And some of these farms have been in their the farm that I live and work on has been in the family since the 1860s. Wow. And so I guess Emily, or my wife, would be 7th generation. Wow. So my kids would
on the same farm.
Sorry, she might be 6th, and my kids would be 7th, but on the same farm. So
that's awesome.
It's changed a lot, of course. My in-laws worked full-time jobs to build it, kind of, and transition it into what it is now. But it's the land has been farmed by by the family.
That's pretty
for a
cool.
long time. So it is cool.
Yeah. So, we didn't actually say, but it's Cassian. What's your last name again?
Ferlette.
Ferlette.
Not a Valley last name.
And you are a farmer / comedian.
Correct. Yeah. Neither of which I would have ever, or anybody I grew up with would have ever guessed probably.
What would the guess be?
What would the guess be?
Criminal?
No, not criminal. But I don't know. Actually, I was very like studious in my early years and shy and very into sports. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I grew up in a city. I didn't know really, or I have that appreciation of where my food came from, and like agriculture just didn't know anything about it. Wasn't in the cards. Yeah. It wasn't until I started dating my wife and kind of coming back here on weekends, and I started to get an appreciation for it, and she was doing I graduated, we both went to school in Fredericton, and she was doing her master's here, so I said, well, I'll come to the Valley, and while you finish your master's, and I'll just, work a couple jobs, and we'll go traveling when she's done. That was the plan. Yeah. And then we got pregnant, and I started working at Scotian Gold. Yeah. And I was seeing farmers every day, and I started getting more interested in her family's farm and getting an appreciation for it. And I thought I'd like to try it, and they needed some help on harvest, and that was 10 years ago. Never left. And I love it. I don't know what else I would do now, honestly, but it's cool. Yeah, it is cool. It's definitely have an appreciation, and I think people who grew up here and live here, just because you're surrounded by it, without even, I don't even know if it's conscious thought, but people, I think, value where their food comes from and try and buy. Yeah, that's people what they grew up around, right? Yeah. And so that's cool to see, and that's not something I grew up with. So, like my friends, I think from home would think, I'm not sure what that haven't been to the farm. I'm not sure what they picture. I don't know if they think I have like a couple big old standard trees in my backyard and I sell them by the road or something. But like it's just this picture that people who don't know anything about agriculture have in their heads, I think, is so vastly different from what modern agriculture looks like.
Well, it's strange, isn't it? Because not very long ago, people had a very intimate relationship with where their food came from.
Big time.
They was like they'd go be involved in hunting or hunting and
didn't really
farming.
Didn't have a choice.
No, you didn't have a choice. There was no superstore.
No.
And not that long ago, really.
Not that long. No, not in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. I remember like when I was growing up, I grew up on a farm. I remember, we're having potatoes tonight. Go get potatoes. Like I just...
we still do that to an extent. Like we all kind of garden a little bit. We farm full time, so the last thing you want to do sometimes is you get home and go pull weeds in your garden. You just pull the weeds in a big garden, basically. Yeah. But there's still some of that. So like we'll go out and get tomatoes or potatoes or whatever for supper right from the yard, and that was cool. Just to be able to do that, you take it for granted when you've done it your whole life, but I didn't. So when we got here and started, the first thing was like a big garden before I got in the farm, and I was like, this is awesome. And we were really into it for a while. It's way better,
way healthier.
Yeah.
Like there's that. I think it's more natural for us as well.
Big time. Yeah. And having the kids involved was cool. Like, but it's not a novelty to them. Like they grew up going out to the yard and eating things from it.
Yeah. So I remember his mom didn't let me have a snack. I'd just go to the garden.
Yeah. Get some green beans or something. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just a little hunting, gathering 8-year-old in the yard. There was nothing like a fresh tomato and some salt.
Can't quite beat it.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how good it is until you have something that's from the other side of the continent. How long has it been in the truck or a shelf or whatever?
I remember I would just steal Mom's salt shaker and just go to the garden, just eat cucumbers and tomatoes and
it's the best.
Peas and stuff. Salt shaker was always missing.
You got to add a little bit of something to it.
Well, not now. I wouldn't do that now, but for some reason I got it in my head when I was a kid. You needed salt. I don't know why, but
I didn't. I grew up. My grandmother or my mom's side of the family is Portuguese, so I ate at her place a lot. Like she did a lot of cooking, and my parents worked, so we spent a lot of time with my grandparents, which culturally is very much how it is. Like the grandparents want to kind of take care of the kids,
right?
So I ate a lot of Portuguese food growing up, and then there's things that when I kind of moved here and was around Emily's family a lot more and stuff, just like I didn't really use butter growing up. Like I had olive oil and didn't use.
Nothing wrong with olive oil
No,
or
it's great,
butter.
but it's
Give
just
me both.
There's just certain things that I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that this is how people like next door to me. And I wasn't like that different.
Yeah.
But just like a lot of Portuguese meals growing up, and so there was just different things that seemed obvious that everyone would have that I just wasn't really introduced to right off the bat. So.
It's funny though, right? Like, not very long ago, kids had access to grandparents and great grandparents and aunts and uncles. Like, it's a very different way, and we live very differently in a very short amount of time.
Well, I guess people can. Yeah, your aunts and uncles now can live a 6-hour flight away pretty quickly.
Yeah. I grew up in a neighborhood where everyone was related, and if you acted up, you could get whacked by anybody at any time. That's just how I grew up.
They were all in.
Oh, yeah.
Had to watch out being in arm's reach of anybody.
That's right.
That could potentially discipline you.
Yeah, but like they say, there's a loneliness epidemic now. They say there's a lot of people are lonely. And I've heard something like 24% of Canadian households are single person households.
Oh wow!
So you got like seniors, students, separated people. There's a lot of people living alone, and maybe that's partly why we have a bit of a housing crisis. Because go back 50 years ago, that did not happen.
No, and like the example, my grandmother again, my grandfather passed away, and she had this house, and she, was very independent, so she was living in there by herself. And now my sister, I have a twin sister, and she was looking to move back home where we were from, and she moved in with my grandmother with her partner. They kind of live in a apartment style upstairs, and they share a house and they eat meals together, and it's like done wonders for both of them.
Yeah, it's good
financially
it's good
for my sister and her partner, and
people shame on that a little bit. They won't. I think our culture is too independent sometimes.
Yeah, I would say probably. Or we're taught that that's what we're supposed to
taught that's what we're
do,
supposed
is
to do.
like do everything yourself and be completely independent.
But it's good for kids to see the aging process. It's good for kids to be exposed to like older, wiser people.
Big time.
It's good for older people to see children. You know what I mean? Like,
it's good for everybody.
That'll keep you young. Yeah, it's good for everybody.
I mean, I'm not, I guess probably just North America is probably pretty bad for it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of
Other
European
parts of the
cultures
world
and stuff are a lot better at that for sure.
But the Western world is a little bit obsessed with independence.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Like my mom would never, she wouldn't put my grandmother in a home. Not that there's something wrong with putting, your grandparents in homes if that's what they need.
Yeah.
But just culturally, that just wouldn't be.
She'll
just move in with my parents, or they'll move in with her until.
Yeah. I have a foreign friend who said recently, I won't name him because it's funny. He said, I don't understand you white people. You bring the dog in, but you put grandma out.
Yeah.
What is this?
It's hard.
Because where they come from, you just don't do that.
No, you don't. But, here, and it's difficult. I'm getting to an age now where, my wife's grandparents are getting older. Our parents are getting older. And we're watching basically our parents deal with the end years of their parents' lives and the struggles and stuff that entails, and the extra work that puts on the generation above us. But it's important to care for them and keep them a part of your family's lives, because they have a lot of great stories and insight to share. And we have great times with our grandparents still. They're very valuable people in our lives. So
I was always close to my grandparents. Yeah, cool. I don't know how we got far down.
How did we get here?
Here we are missing our grandparents. I don't have any left. It's kind of sad. I don't have any left. I grew up with grandparents and great grandparents.
I feel very fortunate. But there's they start to, we get into your 30s, and if you still have them around, that's kind of.
But I'm a grandparent myself now.
Oh wow, congrats.
Old.
How old are your?
I have a grandson who's 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in Disney right now. He's having a blast.
No doubt.
You'd think 5 months is too young for Disney, but they send me videos all day, and he is totally engaged with what's going on.
Why not?
Just his brain is just firing, just watching all these.
A lot of stimulus.
Yeah.
I mean, he won't remember it, but he's having fun.
Oh, he'll remember it. It's all friggin' documented like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he doesn't have to remember it. It's remembered for him. And
exactly. He can watch it back later.
Yeah, the iCloud storage that I think I'm still paying for is full of it.
Yeah, you can accumulate a lot of pictures and videos in a hurry.
And if you're not disciplined to go and delete stuff, it adds up. And then Apple says you've hit your max. You need to buy more. And it's like, okay, I'm too lazy to deal with that. So sure, another 95 cents a month.
Yeah,
great. Yeah,
I'm getting worse at that. Like, I don't even documenting like the farm. Mm-hmm. I guess going back to it, I was, about the intro to your podcast is talking to interesting people about interesting stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And for the most part, a lot of people don't find what they do interesting or for themselves interesting because you do it every day. That's just your life.
It's true.
So even like the farm, for example, I don't know. That's just what I do. I see it every day. The people that I know and spend time with also do it for the most part. But I find that folks, even from home or wherever, that are interested in it.
Yeah.
And I don't do a good job documenting it because to me it's like, oh, whatever, who cares?
Yeah, I think when COVID hit, people got really interested in growing food.
Yep.
Like something like, and you go back 100 years ago and so many people were farmers. Now I think it's like less than 1% of the population is involved in the food process because it's so mechanized.
Big time.
And they say like, you might need a surgeon once in your life. You might need a doctor or a lawyer a couple of times in your life, but everybody needs a farmer 3 times a day.
Yep.
They're very, very important, but there's only 1% of the population that's actually doing it. And when the supply chain started melting down and everyone was worried, like during COVID, people I think there's some little warning bells went off in people's heads, and they're got very interested in the intimacies of food production and the food chain supply and stuff like that. A lot of people started gardening and making sourdough, and we had Ken from Revival Seeds on a couple weeks ago, and it was a great conversation. But their business is just booming because people, I think, are really concerned now and really interested in what's going on in the food chain.
When you, I guess that 1% statistic is surprising when you look at it. A lot of it's larger portions of land or things farmed more intensively, and less people farming more acreage. And now the game is basically trying to grow as much as possible in as little land as possible, and just getting better and more efficient. We got a lot of people to feed and less people growing food, and it's interesting if you
think of like 1,000 years ago or thousands of years ago, where hunter-gatherers, even farmers, like everybody was involved in the food process. From children to seniors, whatever. If you couldn't walk, you were sitting around the fire processing the food and stuff like that.
I mean, that was there were few, when life was simpler, there were few necessities.
Yeah.
You got to survive, and eating is obviously a massive
fight
part
and
of
eat.
that.
Fight and eat. Reproduce. That's all you really had to do. So, and now, like, only 1% of us. If there was 100 people in the world, there's one guy that's doing all the food. It's a big switch, to think about, isn't it? Yeah.
And it doesn't take a lot of space to be able to grow enough food for yourself if you can and preserve and do some of those things. It really doesn't take that much area to do that. Yeah. But it is a learning curve because we've gotten away from that. We don't learn it in schools unless somebody taught you. Yeah, but it's a big learning curve to start from scratch. But like you said, more and more people seem to be getting interested in having a little hobby farm or having a little bit of land to do something.
Yeah, before COVID, the only young people that were growing stuff were drug dealers.
Yeah, and now people are switched over to tomatoes.
Yeah. Like I didn't know any young person that was farming. You know what I mean? Not really.
And it's really hard to get into it unless you were born into a family that you could have it passed down to you. It's not
just to start from scratch.
It's very expensive, and it's so expensive to a point where you don't really have a huge margin for error to make those mistakes you need to make to get to a point where you're good at it.
Well, if you're doing it for business,
right? So
you don't.
So it is difficult to be a young person and just come in and decide, hey, this is what I want to do. If you don't have a mentor or were born into it, like it would be tough. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and there's fewer options too. Like you said, there's less people farming larger portions of the pie. It's a tough thing to get into on a larger scale if you want to do it as your sole source of income.
Yeah, something we have like, there's no real theme to this podcast. It's like
That's
interesting people
we're all
doing
over the
interesting
place,
shit. But one of the things, kind of our bit of a pet project we have in a passion we have lately is the whole like local food supply and how it then impacts our food security and our health. Because so many people they're so unhealthy with such unhealthy diets, you know. Like I would love to see us have a tax for the shitty food, you know, like the sugars and all that stuff, like the candies and the cakes and all that garbage, and take that tax and help grow more healthy food, and then use some of that money to educate people. And I think that would help us with our healthcare crisis down the road. If you have people say we need more doctors, but I keep saying, what if we had fewer sick people? And I think if we had healthier food, we'd have a lot less sick people. Let's not patch me up later with, you know,
Sure.
a fake hip because I'm obese, or heart surgeries,
Let's be
or
preventative
diabetes.
instead of reactive.
Help me be, if we have a real healthcare system, why don't we invest on having people healthy from the beginning? And I think that's where I think we need more farmers and less doctors. And that's what I would love to see.
It's a good point. I mean, where we live, we absolutely have great access to great healthy food at every corner.
Yeah.
Like everybody here.
Yeah. And I think Nova Scotia, because we have a health crisis, we have a really, and the skills and the land, we have a really good opportunity to kind of be like world leaders in this kind of a thing. If we could pull something like that together. With
how Nova Scotia in particular is set up, we can be very self-sufficient.
Yeah.
We might not be able to grow avocados here, but
No.
we can grow the essentials
Yeah.
that we need for sure. And not all places in the world have that option.
Right.
Canada's in general, we got lots of hubs, the Niagara area and then out in BC and
lots of water.
And lots of water, yeah.
Because some places are running out of water to raise the crops. Like California, it's ridiculous how much water it takes to grow almonds. It's like unreal how much water it takes to grow almonds. Like they're draining huge
Well, I went down
reservoirs.
to Washington State. They grow a lot of apples out there. I farm apples, so I don't think I've said that yet. But it's so interesting to see the same crop grown in a different part of the world. Like we have just night and day different challenges. They can double our yields per acre without even trying, just based on area.
And why is that?
Heat units, like they just have a lot of heat units.
Longer growing season.
Growing season, yeah. For us, we can grow some of the best Honeycrisp in the world, flavor and color. And for the most, don't tell anyone this. It's not.
Don't tell anyone this,
but it's
okay,
not necessarily
don't tell anyone
the Honeycrisp part you can, but it's maybe not necessarily something that the farmer does. We're just blessed with the right climate to finish that particular piece of fruit very well.
Does the Honeycrisp originate from here?
No, I think it was out of Minnesota, I believe. Okay. Actually, it was in a breeding program there.
But Nova Scotia took it and was like, watch this.
Well, people were growing it in other areas, and my father-in-law was actually on a trip and helped convince some people to start growing it here, and it changed the industry here. Like we used to be big Macintosh in Cortland. Not that there's anything wrong with those apples, but the Honeycrisp and the price that it brought allowed people to expand their farms, and there was some money coming into farms now. So all of a sudden, that next generation was interested again.
So it'd be like a newer thing, and it's less of a commodity and more of like a specialty thing, right?
I mean, it's a similar way of growing things, but it fetched a higher dollar that was actually making apple farms profitable, and then those farms were reinvesting in their farms, planting more of that variety, more Honeycrisp, and then just planting more modern orchard styles.
So is that like is that a trademark thing? Do you have to have like a registered?
You don't for Honeycrisp.
No Honeycrisp.
The apple industry definitely. Like, so this is the exact scenario where people ask questions about apples. I'm like, are they actually interested in apples? Because I mean, it seems so boring, but I don't know. I could talk about it all day, but
I mean, I think it's interesting.
Apples are delicious.
All right.
We talked for like 2 hours here about tea one day.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I mean, I think if you look at a store shelf now, you'll see, I don't know how many types of apples, but it's more than you can really take in or decide on.
Oh, yeah.
Go for
But there's
your
different
favorites.
purposes, right?
There is for sure.
like
It's overwhelming
baking
a little
apples.
bit. If you don't know what you're looking for, it's completely overwhelming.
It can be, yeah. So a lot of time you'll go for the Honey Crisp had a lot of it did really well, and now a lot of people recognize that name. But you'll go in there and you'll see like Jazz and Envies and Sweet Tangos and Ambrosia.
Sounds
a lot
like a
of
weed
those,
store or something.
right? Exactly, yeah. So there's so many of them. A lot of them are patented varieties that you need the rights to grow.
Okay.
And that's kind of the way that the industry seems to be going.
Right.
You can't just plant a tree and then have apples. There needs to be some forethought that goes into it. So a lot of the time, like we did with Honeycrisp, you take a chance on a variety that you think is going to do well, and you plant it, and then you put the money in to establish that acreage, and then hopefully it does well in the marketplace, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't.
So if you're switching over suddenly to something like Honeycrisp, you have to like plant a whole new tree, or can you like graft that into a tree that was already there?
You can. That is what happened early on.
You kind of accelerate things that way.
You do, because you already have your engine of your tree in the ground, root system established, so you could graft onto the top and get into production quicker. But it may not end up being like the style of orchard you want, because now, even 15 years ago, let's say we were planting 800 trees of the acre was tight. And now, like this year's planting, I planted 1,500.
So they put them in like trellises, like grapes now, right?
Yeah. So now they're dwarfing rootstock to keep the trees smaller, because then you get more light exposure, better quality fruit. So like redder fruit, you don't get the same tonnage per tree because the trees are smaller, but you get a lot higher quality. So now on these smaller trees, I might get 90% that hits the color requirements and stuff for the fresh fruit market, which is where the money is. Whereas those bigger trees, I might get like 50%. I grow more fruit, but less of it is marketable.
Right. And getting it to production, like in amount of years, like with the smaller ones that they grow on the trellis type, like on the wires,
I can put some fruit
quick,
on by year 3.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a vineyard.
Yep.
Yeah. But like an apple tree would take how many years to get to maturity? Like a long time.
Year 3, I can start growing some fruit. I'd say by year 5 or 6, hopefully I'm kind of getting close to full production. You'll get new growth, but in this climate, especially on a Honeycrisp, it's kind of a lower vigor variety. They start to shut down when you put fruit on them.
Okay.
In places like Washington, you can definitely keep the tree growing while cropping it, which is another reason why they can grow so many. But it's every variety is different, and you're playing around with varieties and rootstock combinations and trying to find what works best for you and what you like farming. And a lot of the ways we get these ideas, we travel around other apple growing regions and we see what we like, and I like that trellis system, or I like that variety, or whatever. Let's try it at home and see. And some things we can do here, and some things we can't. But that's part of the fun, is trying something. I try and try one new thing every year, even if it's small, and just try and better the operation. But it's fun. I'm sure everyone who's listening probably just turned this off. But.
I feel like it's easier to harvest from those trellis kind of things too, right? Like
huge.
I thought I saw someone driving down with a truck one time, like picking off the back of a truck, maybe
a platform, probably.
Platform,
yeah. It's
on a truck, like a.
It was.
I think it was.
It could have been.
Might have been, yeah.
It's so much more labor efficient.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's way more enjoyable to work in. It's way more efficient to work in, and it's more costly to establish.
So basically, what we're saying is that apple trees are old-fashioned and just
seems like it.
What was that?
Apple trees, like the old, they're out of fashion now. That's old.
So like
old technology.
Those would be like your standard trees.
That goes up and goes out in like 360 degrees. That's
they used to plant 40 trees an acre when it was standard trees. Like they're big trees. Yeah. And now they have to be on trellis systems because the root system's not.
So that's like a different rootstock you graft the thing.
It's a dwarf rootstock. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And the tree itself isn't even big enough to hold the apples.
No. So we put them on a trellis system. Yeah. The trees can barely. Like they may break in the wind without fruit on them. As soon as you put a crop on them, you need a trellis system when you go that small of a stock.
So that means that and the reason for that is like because actually the all the rootstock is using up less energy effectively, right, as well. So is that part of it?
It's a smaller system, so it's providing the top with less energy, which is controlling the size of that tree.
Okay.
And depending on your operation and your spacing, you want different tree sizes that are going to fit within that spacing, and how you farm too. So some people still like the bigger style trees, and they like spacing them a little further apart, and that's fine. It's what fits for you. You can still plant standard trees if you want. It's just not going to be very labor efficient, and you're not going to.
Depends on what your situation is with labor, I guess, because some people have access to cheap labor, right? Not necessarily around here, but depending on where you are in the world, right?
Depending on where you are in the world, and the apple industry around the world looks very different, just like it would with dairy or whatever. But it looks very different based on where you are in the world and the climate and your availability, your labor availability, and some places are grown for processing. China grows a lot of fruit for processing, so they're just all about volume. They don't care what
safety or nothing,
what the fruit looks like necessarily.
Yeah,
so
what it tastes like or what's in it or whatever.
So it's what's your market and like for here, our market that's hopefully going to make the farm profitable is fresh fruit. So the apples have to be very pretty and colored up and perfect size. So this is kind of how we can
People
do that.
should buy local, because not only is it better quality, probably with more standards, it keeps money in our communities. But if the supply chain goes down and we haven't invested in that local supply chain, if we get all of our food from somewhere else in the world and all of a sudden the supply chain goes down again for whatever reason, it could be a war, it could be a virus, could be whatever. We don't know. We never questioned that in 2019. We just didn't. And then it became a real issue.
Big time, yeah. And it always blows me away when I see food in our grocery stores that we grow here.
Yeah.
And we ship our apples go all over as well, but there's tons of locally grown Nova Scotia apples. So I'm always surprised when I see American fruit in the food land in Berwick. You have
or Brazil Brazil,
New Zealand, and sometimes it's seasonal. Like our fruit only goes so far, and New Zealand has an opposite season to us. So
you keep apples how long?
You can keep them basically. If
you treat them right.
Yeah. So they go into a controlled atmosphere storage, and they're pulling them out in July, and you're starting to pick them again in August. So you can have local apples year round. The variety might change. Some varieties store better than others. But at the end of you can have some sort of Nova Scotia apple pretty well 12 months of the year now.
I didn't know that crops had that. It's not trademark. What do you call it?
Patented,
I guess, something like that. Yeah, I didn't know that until I got into the brewing business, because buying hops, I was wondering, why are some hops $9 a pound and some of them are $22 a pound? The older ones, Fuggles or Cascade, stuff like that. That's just, everyone's been growing those for hundreds of years, so there's no trademark on it. But to have Mosaics or Azacca, some of these more sexy dry hopping hops, for IPAs, there's Azacca in this. I paid $22.50 a pound for the Azacca hops in this.
And do you find it's worth the extra?
Oh, it's a totally different experience.
Gives you a different product.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you made an IPA out of Cascades and stuff like that, it would taste like the 90s.
It's very good, by the way.
But there's nothing wrong with the 90s beer. Thank you. There's nothing wrong with the 90s beer, but it was 90s beer. You know what I mean? There's just so many more layers of nuance to these new breeds of hops. There used to be 6 or 8 natural strains of hops not very long ago.
And now there's how many?
Hundreds. Okay. They have some that taste like coconuts. It's amazing, because these breeders are just making this.
Same with apple. There's thousands of apple varieties, and there's tons in these research trials, and most of them don't even make it to the next step. So that's interesting. Have you ever thought of growing them? Hops?
Growing them isn't too hard, but it's processing them and keeping them, because they oxidize really quick. So they're only ready maybe a week. Okay. I think around now, early September.
And then what do you have? What's the process?
Well, you got to pick them, you got to dry them, and then you've got to pelletize them. Either you reuse them right away in that week, or you've got to pelletize them and have nitrogen purged bags and all this stuff. So you could grow a great hop, but if you really don't know what you're doing, you can ruin it in the in the processing stage,
I
because
guess-
you got
I
to
guess
keep it
same
in a
with most
bag. You
things.
got to keep it. You want to make beer like next spring.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Somehow find a way to keep oxygen away from it, which is actually
Yeah.
not easy.
not easy at all.
So it's the same thing with apples. Like
Yeah.
they have to go in storage, and they basically pull all the
Yeah, but you
oxygen
don't
out of
have-
the room and slow.
Oh, do
that,
they?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
To slow that
I didn't know that.
ripening process.
And they like keep it slightly cooler as well, right?
Yeah.
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 So it could be dangerous in the room with no oxygen.
Yeah. Anyone who works there has a meter that would
Wow.
basically. But once the room's closed and
Yeah.
they don't go in there until it's time to pull that fruit out.
Because oxygen is the enemy to freshness.
Yeah, it can.
It really
Yeah,
is.
which makes things difficult in this world.
Yeah, yeah. Because even if I open a bag, like the bags, hops come in like 5 kilogram bags, open it, use a little bit, I purge it with CO2, wrap it up, put it away. Now, if I'm dry hopping, that's when the beer's done, and you're putting a huge amount of hops into the tank after it's fermented. Then I'll use like a whole bag, because I don't want to, like, it's open and it's empty within 10 seconds kind of thing. It doesn't have a chance to get exposed to oxygen at all.
Right, you use right away.
Yeah. If a little bit of hops get exposed to oxygen and you put it into the kettle, it's not going to be so bad, because you're going to boil it up. And yeah, but the dry hop is where you really want the freshest hops, because there's no boiling process or anything to cover up.
You're going to taste it if it's
you're going to
oxidized.
taste it. Yeah.
But you can smell. You can smell it when hops is oxidized. You can smell it.
Yeah,
There's like a. It does
gross, like wet cardboard
Yeah.
kind of.
It's like same. Keep bringing it back to apples here,
Yeah.
but same thing. Like you can go in an orchard that's the fruit even on the tree is starting to become really ripe, and you can smell it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you totally can.
I mean, even you can smell ripe fruit. It gives.
I can definitely smell when my bananas are getting ripe in my kitchen, for sure.
That's when they're at their best.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah, I think we must be very tuned to that as humans, like, because we say like sharks can detect some, like, 1 part per billion of blood in it, but there's things like that and things like that, that wet sort of rain smell. We can smell that much better than
Food's
a lot
probably
of
just like a safety mechanism.
Oh yeah,
With
but like
just
it's
knowing when things are.
yeah, we're
ready
much
to-
better at that than we think. I think like
Probably.
I
we
agree.
we're not very well trained in it, because none of us really care most of the time. But I think
Well, it's like I have a little vegetable garden, and it's probably 100 feet from my house. But when I'm standing in my kitchen, I can see if the tomato's ripe from like a good 100 feet away.
Yeah.
It's like I know when that
You got a
tomato's
few-
ready
you got a
for
few
me. It's
shiners
like,
in there
I
waiting
see
for
it.
you.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna get that.
you could ripe tomatoes smell pretty good.
Oh man,
do,
they get these
yeah.
cherry tomatoes now. My breakfast for the last probably month has been breakfast sausages and cherry tomatoes. That's it.
Sounds perfect.
That's great. I just
Yeah.
put them in a coffee cup. I'm just eating sausages and
On the
cherry
fly, there you
tomatoes
go.
out of a coffee cup after my workout or whatever.
That's a proper man breakfast. That is.
It is.
It is, yeah.
So what you got in your cup?
See?
Breakfast sausages and tomatoes.
Cherry tomatoes go with pretty much everything.
They do.
Yeah, you
And when you grow them yourself,
Oh, they're
oh
the
my
best,
goodness,
yeah.
it's so much better. I
think that's everything.
It's $10 for a little package at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's
I pick one of them like every other day right now.
that's another reason you should grow your own food. It's very
I
expensive.
think
right
I've
now.
raised $10,000 worth of cherry tomatoes if my
Yeah.
math is right.
Put a little stand up by the road.
No,
I have-
I'm not sharing them.
I have 1 tomato in my garden.
One tomato. I grew 4 pepper plants and I've got 1 pepper. That's disappointing,
Yeah,
We-
but the pepper plants take a little while.
I guess.
I would say between peppers are hard. I would say between my wife and I, we have her more so. We have a lot of gardening knowledge. We have horrible gardens because we're
Busy.
busy parents and we work a lot. Like until you're retired or it's your
Yeah.
job, it's hard to have a good garden.
It looks like Charles Darwin's in charge of my garden.
Yeah,
You just plant it and the strong survive.
yeah. Well, that's yeah.
It's like that. At first, I was down there every day picking the weeds and watering, and then after about a week, I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah, there's so much hope and care at the start of the season.
Yeah.
It's like farming in general. Like there's so much hope at
like
in
kids.
the spring, and then all of a sudden, by the end of it, you're just like, oh my god, let me get out of this what I can get and move on till next
You
year.
just cut your losses there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot.
it is a lot. I think it's something that we should do more. And then we are doing more. I think we're doing way more. I see so many, especially young people, that are really curious, really interested.
Yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah.
Now this one, well, it was during COVID. I couldn't get any labor, and we were digging trees. And I had coached a bunch of kids in soccer for like 5 or 6 years. I was like, well, I texted a couple of them, and 6 or 7 of the guys came out,
Really?
and they worked for us for a couple of days and helped us dig our tree nursery. And like it's a lot of things about farming is very like time specific.
Yeah.
Depending on whether like this is the window that we can do
Yeah.
it. And I just had no help, and they came, and these kids that were sitting at home and didn't have to be there at all came out and helped us out, and that was great. And
That's
they had a
cool.
good time, and they
Yeah.
were asking lots of questions and seemed interested, and
Yeah.
so that was cool.
They'll
to
tell
see.
their children about that someday.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I always, I had no, like I said, no farming background, but I did, when I was growing up, I had a friend who played on my soccer team, and I was going to stay at his place on the weekend. He lived on a farm. And I ended up having to work on the farm with him before our soccer game. And I told my wife this story about 500 times, and she reminds me every time. She's like, I know. Like, you had
know.
one farming story
You're a
in your
farmer.
youth. Congratulations. Yeah. That was like every day of my childhood. So she's not very impressed by it. But that was my big story to try and impress her early on. Is this one experience I
You
had.
might
in
have
my
been better
youth.
off without that. story.
100%. Yeah, she was not impressed at all.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm too. We didn't have plants, but it was animals, and you just gotta, when you have thousands of animals that's dependent on you,
That's harder.
you gotta show up.
I couldn't
They
do
gotta
that.
eat, they gotta sleep, they gotta drink, they gotta all these things.
Every day.
Yeah,
Trees go to sleep.
yeah.
Animals still need to be fed. In the
It didn't matter if
wintertime.
it was Christmas, didn't matter if you were sick, didn't matter if it was your birthday. It didn't matter.
No.
Storms, whatever. Like these animals are dependent on you to eat and drink and survive.
It's a tough gig. We got a lot of chicken farmers and livestock farmers here, and
Yeah.
that's every day. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
every day.
Christmas Day, whatever day.
Yep.
They need to eat and they need water, and that's a tough gig. So
Well, it's a good way to learn responsibility, and a lot of people don't have a lot of that now. I think the more we get away from the responsibility of farming, now that instead of 100% of us, there's only 1% of us that are doing
Yeah.
that kind of labor-intensive, high responsibility stuff. I wonder if that's changed our culture a little bit, just like the level of responsibility.
I would say
and,
probably.
in connection to nature and all that kind of stuff.
And I'm like the same thing with my kids. I'm trying to show them the farm, but I don't want to. I'm trying not to be pushy.
No,
I mean, they're still young yet,
Yeah.
but hey, this is a job I'm doing that you can come or hop in the truck and we can
and
go
if
look
they
at
learn
this.
that work ethic young, they'll take that on to whatever they do. Like I would always hire someone that grew up on a farm.
They have,
9
there's a
out of 10
different,
times, they have a different kind of work
it's a
ethic.
different breed of person
Absolutely.
for sure.
Well, they understand that something has to be done.
Yeah.
Because it's like in your own life. Like if I don't do this now, it doesn't get done. Then we don't get paid. Everything's a fuck up. You're
Yeah.
aware of that, right?
Yeah.
It's not, exactly. It's not all fun. It's funny, like my kids, same thing. Like we have a 16-ton excavator in the yard. And
That's
like,
fun.
It is, but to them, it's just like always there.
Yeah.
But their friends come over and they're like, can we like dig a hole with that? And I was like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, just my kids seeing these other kids thinking that this place that they live is so cool, kind of reminds them like, oh yeah,
It is cool.
maybe I will go like walk in the backyard in this
Yeah.
slate pit that we dug the other day.
Take it in.
Yeah, and just like enjoy that.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, just they always can grab fruit off a tree.
And
eat
farmers
it.
know how to do a lot of stuff. You do so many different things as a farmer. You got to fix things. You got to build things. You got to grow things. You got to the
Learn how to run a
financial side of
business,
it.
yeah,
There's
it's-
so many things.
And I didn't know anything. I was useless. I didn't realize.
It must
that-
be love they put up with you.
Oh my! Well, honestly, they taught me a lot, and the lifestyle taught me a lot. But like, I didn't realize how. I guess useless is a harsh word,
No, they'd probably agree.
but they would agree 100%. But
Because
there's lots of people
Another
that
thing
had.
farmers do well is talk shit.
Oh, they do. They talk a lot of shit when they have time to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just didn't know how to like do anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize. And all of a sudden, I'm in my like mid to late 20s, and I don't. I know what I went to school for, I guess.
Yeah.
But like I don't. If I had to, I feel like I can survive without anything. I can grow some food.
Now you can.
Now I can.
Yeah. You
You
could
know,
build
I can-
shelter. You can
Enough.
do those
It's not
kinds of
going to be
things, yeah.
pretty, but like
You could
I can
fix something.
I do the stuff on my house because I'm
Yeah.
cheap and I'll learn
Yeah.
to do it if
Well,
I
I
have
grew
to.
up, there was a lot of people that were maybe grade 6 education, but multimillionaires and could do anything.
Yeah.
Could do anything.
There's a lot of value, and I think we're seeing that now too. Like the trades, farming, where there's a lot of value in that type of work
Yeah.
and providing those services. And because we got away from people wanting to do it,
Yeah.
like and even my generation was like, you got to go to college, you got to go to university to get a good job.
Yeah.
That was just there was
That's
one
what
route.
it was.
That's what
then
it was.
everyone did that, and everything is like
Now
supply
you need
demand.
3 degrees.
Supply demand, right? Like
Yeah.
back when there was not a high level of education, and education got you somewhere. Now that everybody was put in university and everyone has degrees, well, now they're not worth so much.
Absolutely.
Now it's like, oh shit,
We
we
need plumbers.
educated everyone. Now
Yeah.
we need plumbers.
Yeah.
Now the shit's backing up.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
Yep.
like Ben has some septic issues, and you got to fix a pipe.
Yes.
And good thing he knew a former farmer who knows how to do some digging. So
That's right.
we're renting a tractor, right? He's
That's
like,
right,
"Would you
yeah.
mind help?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I want to dig some holes. I
Yeah,
love
it's
that
fun.
shit."
Some of it's a lot of fun, and
Get
you
some
forget
pizza
that
and
when
beer,
it's
and we're gonna dig some holes. The
Sure.
whole yard would be dug up. Amber will love it.
the last the last septic
Digging holes is
work I
cool.
did. I pierced the septic line of my in-laws' house, and then
Better their house than yours.
yeah, and quickly went to get some new pipe and repaired it before
Yeah.
they got home. I was just like digging a trench to run some line, and he's like, "Oh, there's the septic lines."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Found
"Oh
it?
yeah, well, yeah." And I had a spotter, and he just wasn't
Yeah.
like looking at the time. Yeah, so that was my last experience, but we fixed it. It was fine.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
All's well that ends well.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh
right.
yeah, we can handle it. It's fine.
But yeah, no, it's we do a lot of. I grow apples, but I've also like shingled roofs
Oh, yeah.
and done what needs to be done because that's and you just learn how to do that stuff. And my father-in-law is just like can do anything
Yeah.
mechanically and he read a book on how to build a house and then he built a house
Yeah.
for some employees that we had coming in. So he just
Yeah.
did
I mean,
that.
it's amazing.
Never built a house before, but he just figured
farmers
it
are
out.
some of the most
How hard
resilient
can it be,
people
right?
there. Yeah.
I mean, he made it look like it's not that hard.
Well, that's what skilled people do.
Yeah.
Make things look.
So it's impressive.
Make it look
and,
easy.
Yeah, a lot of people in those industries just find a way to
Yeah.
to do things and figure it out themselves because it's too expensive and time consuming to get someone else to do it for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say they're very farmers are very practical and
Well, I grew up on a mink farm, and we had like a feed room that had a great big meat grinder hooked up to a V8 engine off an old truck. And you had to like start this thing up, and you take these frozen blocks of fish and chicken and put them in there, you would grind it up and up into a mixer, and then off you go.
Right.
And I just thought everybody did shit like that.
yeah, they don't.
And then you make a friend with
They
someone.
definitely don't.
They
know.
don't.
And their dad can't even put together an IKEA shelf.
Yeah.
It's like what? Like my dad put an engine, a V8 engine on a meat grinder, and you can't like
it's,
come on, you can't put together a shelving unit. Like what's happening here?
And lots of different people bring different things to the
Yeah.
table for sure. But if the way the world's going is fine, but if things change and we all had to fend for ourselves,
Right.
there's a very small percentage, a much smaller percentage now than 100 years ago
Yeah,
that would be able to figure it out, I think.
yeah.
Which is,
If you're a lawyer, no disrespect to lawyers, but if you're a lawyer and the whole system goes down, you're useless because nobody cares about the law.
not at that point.
Not at that
probably.
point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and who's going to be
Or
enforcing it, right?
Trading
Yeah.
stocks or something like that. Like few people.
And to
can
be fair, I
pretty
know
useless
nothing
pretty
about
quick.
any of that stuff.
No.
I'm horrible at all of it.
It's
I don't
also,
know anything.
unless you have money already, that's not very useful knowledge necessarily.
No. I know a lot of very well paid, highly educated, successful people that can't even mow their own lawns.
Yeah, or if like the mower stopped working, they'd be like, well, I guess I'll get another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
And I know some people with no education and no teeth, and they can do anything.
Yeah. Fixing lawnmowers, I feel like, is very high on the list of, of people in those situations. Man, if you see somebody with no teeth and is like, I bet you they can fix a lawnmower.
They can fix a lawnmower.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Small engine repair all day.
All that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably learn how to tame a moose and ride it. Who knows what they could do? These people pull out some amazing skills.
Will surprise you.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's I'm constantly reminded of the community I live in now and moved to. Like the other day, it was nighttime, it was like pitch black out, and I was driving down the road, and there was some sort of 3-wheel device that you could tell just
Three-wheel device.
just got up and running because there's no lights, a lot of smoke and noise, and a guy And once my headlights hit him, just with like a huge grin, just riding this
working
thing
on
down
that
the
for
road.
weeks.
I'm like, oh yeah, this is where I live now.
The welding probably isn't even cold on that thing.
No,
yet.
no, and he's testing it out.
Yeah.
And it was working.
Yep.
But I was just like, oh yeah, this is where I'm at. It's cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty neat.
It's
Yeah.
different.
So working on the farm, you probably get lots of time to like think, right?
Yeah.
Work on comedy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've written a lot of bits in the tractor.
Yeah.
Listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of audiobooks, music. You get tired of stuff and then you move on to the next thing. But it's a lot of time alone in your own head, listening or thinking. Yeah.
That's how I learned to make beer. I was working on the farm, just spending hours a day, just listening to podcasts.
Oh, really?
The Brewing Network out of Berkeley, California, they had, I think, probably 10 years catalog of podcasts, like hours and hours and hours. So I'd listen to like 6 or 8 hours a day on my phone on the farm.
What got you interested in wanting to make beer?
Well, I didn't drink anything until I was 32 because I was a preacher.
I actually
Didn't drink
I
at
heard
all.
that on the.
Yeah.
I think you were talking to the guy from the Whiskey Teller.
Yeah,
You mentioned that. Anyway.
And then I started to drink a little bit, and I just got really bored of everything that was a liquor store already because they say they had all kinds of beer, but it's really all the same.
It's
like,
very similar stuff.
especially 10 years ago, it was American light lagers. So then I would just get curious about it and needed a hobby. And there was a maritime, or the Brew Nosers homebrew club I found online, found some podcasts, some YouTube channels, stuff like that. And yeah, just jumped right into it. Just loved it.
And just started in a basement.
In my laundry room, I built my own little. I had a great big kettle with an electric element, and I found plans on the internet and built this control box for it. And it was like 220, so I have to unplug the dryer and plug into that. And I remember turning it on for the first time. I was so fucking scared. I had like a plastic stick. I'm like,
fire department.
Turn it on, yeah. Like, woo.
Yeah.
No fires. It's great. I don't know if my insurance company would cover that if I burned the house down with a homemade brew kettle.
But you wouldn't have to tell them that's what you were doing.
Yeah. That's what I did, yeah.
It's farming equipment, no, it's fine.
It was fun.
Somebody broke in and tried to brew beer in my basement.
Yeah, totally. They made me do it. I was held hostage. And my Facebook post had nothing to do with that.
I was so proud. That was under duress.
It was so cool to like build your own kettle system.
What was the transition from your basement to
losing a lot of money on the farm, losing like hundreds of thousands of dollars 3 years in a row? And
you said you were in Mink?
Yeah. And the industry just kind of collapsed. And I always wanted to do the brewing and food. But my dad would say, once you make your million, then you can go play in the brewery. Didn't work that way. We had to lose $1 million, and then I go build the brewery.
Sure.
And now he bottles beer with me. My mom and dad help in the brewery bottling and stuff like that.
Is the farm still in the
No,
family?
it's long gone. Yeah.
Where was that?
Just right next to me in Digby there.
Oh, okay.
Yep. There was mink industry was huge in Nova Scotia.
Yeah. I mean, there were some mink barns up around my way.
Yeah, and I didn't love it. I mean, it's I'm not really into factory farming in the first place.
Yep.
I like to buy my food from more natural, more humane places.
Yep.
Killing animals for a luxury item, it's kind of gross. I was born into it. I had no choice.
Sure.
I was born into the fur industry. Like if you go way back, my family were European and Mi'kmaq trappers. So it was just a way of life. You're just born into it. I remember being 5 years old and getting off the school bus, 1982, and have to go check my rabbit snares and finding one that wasn't quite dead. And your grandfather's like yelling at you, I'm 5 years old.
Yeah.
And he makes me kill it with a stick.
Yeah.
And then skin it. I remember standing in my skidoo suit, skinning this animal. And he's like, this is your heritage. You need to know how to do this. You have to do it. And I'm just crying because I do not want to do this.
That's tough.
And he said, your life might depend on this someday. And I'm like, I hope that son of a bitch is wrong. I hope
Still might.
I know how to do it.
Yeah.
I do it since I was 5 years old. It's not something I do
that's
for
something
fun.
Too, that's,
but it's a very different, but that's what our ancestors did for forever.
I got into it hunting later in life because my dad and grandfathers didn't. Grandparents, women hunt as well.
Yeah.
But I just didn't. So when you're not shown that, or to have somebody directly linked to you that will take you and show you, so I was. Some friends of mine were were kind of into it because their parents did, and really more so enjoyed the being outdoors. The excuse for being out in nature is nice. Like early morning duck hunt or something, you're out before the sun comes up, and at worst you're sitting in the absolute quiet, watching the sun come up, watching birds fly around.
Yeah.
It's not so bad, is it, really?
It's a great way to spend a morning. So if you don't get what you went out for, it's not a wasted day by any means. Just trying to now kind of introduce my kids into it a little bit.
People frown on hunting. They really do. Even people that eat meat from like factory farms.
It's interesting.
Frown on hunting.
Yeah.
I haven't been hunting. I got my license and all that stuff. I'm going to start. I did it when I was a kid, just lost interest, but I believe I want to do it. Now I think it's way more humane to take a wild animal from the forest and feed your family than some of these things you see.
Far less wasteful as well.
Yeah.
Big time. And like, it's all, I don't think people realize either how important it is for the population, like population control. Like that's all looked upon by people that know what they're talking about, that make these decisions on like.
Yeah, it's informed.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's important.
Because ultimately it's in the animal's best interest. Like, because the population would just skyrocket if there was no hunting, right? That would just.
Yeah, so there's a reason that's looked at by, I guess, biologists or somebody that knows what they're talking about, and so it's decided whether the populations warrant like a spring and a fall hunt, bear hunt in New Brunswick or not.
For people that follow the rules.
Yeah,
there's always assholes that go out and take a dozen deer, and those people exist.
Yeah, they do, unfortunately, and it gives everybody kind of a bad rap. But it's an important part of the, like if you think back on same thing like 100 years ago when everybody in rural areas hunted. Yeah. And now the percentage of people that hunt, it's a lot less.
It is, but I think it is coming up.
I think it's getting
more. When
I
was signing up for the gun course, they were booked out months.
Yeah, same thing. I think during COVID, people got interested in
for food and for home defense.
Yeah, maybe.
People getting crazy. I think when times are tough, people will do desperate things.
Yeah, it's they do. I think people are backed in a corner, getting a tough situation is when you. Yeah.
Everyone can be polite when they're all fed and housed and things are good.
Yeah.
Polite society works, but when people start getting desperate, that's when.
For sure.
We see there was 3 homicides over Labor Day weekend in Southwest Nova.
Oh, really?
3.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, like that's a lot. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
we live in.
It's not south side of Chicago.
No.
Yeah.
No. So you kind of don't realize that stuff happens here too.
And you got to wonder if it's are people starting to crack under all the pressure of the economics and all the global stuff. What is it? What is it? This stuff is not normal.
No, especially not for here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's we still live in, I think, one of the best places in the world.
I'm not moving yet.
No.
Yeah.
No, at least we're not in war-torn Europe, right?
No. I think they just reached the other day, estimations are 1 million people have died in the Russia-Ukraine war. 1 million. They're losing about 1,000 a day. That's terrible. Insane.
And it's so easy over here to just, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But it's, we're lucky to be able to be ignorant to that stuff.
Yeah.
Where we live.
And it's always like every war, they say, is you go into it expecting what you saw in the last war, but the technology changes so fast.
100%. Yeah.
They got drones. The Dragon, do you see that Dragon drone?
No.
There was a bunch of Russians hiding in a tree stand. And these are humans. It doesn't matter if they're Russians. These are human beings hiding in a tree stand with tanks and machinery and stuff. And this drone flies over, shooting thermite and lighting the whole forest on fire above them. It just looks like a fire-breathing dragon just firing over, lighting the whole thing up.
From somebody
scary.
From somebody in a room.
Yeah, probably not even in that continent.
Basically playing on a video game.
Yeah.
And it just, that would take the just dehumanizes everything.
Even basically playing Call of Duty in a room alone and actual people are getting killed. That's pretty scary.
It is very scary.
Like,
And then, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it was those pagers blew up, the Hezbollah guys, the pagers blew up. Did you see that?
I didn't, but honestly, I've been horrible at current affairs because I think I just got to a point where it's like,
it is hard to watch.
It's a lot, and which isn't the solution either. I need to do a better job of being aware.
It's an interesting one though, isn't it? Because watching all this stuff is not good for your mental health as well. And
No.
I don't think it is.
There's probably there's a fine balance of, but yeah, it's me. It's a lot. Like
and there's nothing we can actually do. It's not like we have to actually worry right now about the war in Ukraine, what's happening. I mean, it's interesting to keep informed, but actually it does, although it affects prices and global economics on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't actually affect us here.
I go back and forth on it because if you see an old lady being mugged on the other side of the street, you're kind of an asshole to turn your head and walk away.
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But if there's genocide and wars and stuff going on the other side of the world, and we ignore it.
But you're powerless to do. What are you going to do?
I know. Yeah,
That's the difference.
Well,
right?
maybe.
I have heard there have been people who've gone to Ukraine like as volunteers. There have been people who've started GoFundMe things, pretended to go, and not actually gone as well, which is quite funny to me. But like, there are people who do stuff. But ultimately, I mean, I'm not in. If I could volunteer all I wanted, I'm not going to have much help.
Yeah,
there.
I don't know.
I mean, none of us. I mean, I don't.
I just want it to stop.
Yeah, that would be the ideal.
World's full of tons of horrible things, and that's tends to be what we hear about in the news. It's also filled with lots of amazing, cool things and people, and we probably focus on them less because they don't make good headlines.
Yeah,
but,
we do. Well, it's less engagement on social media, isn't it?
Yeah.
All that social. That's not what you click on.
Yeah.
It's the two extremes. It's kittens and like war in Ukraine. It's like the two.
Yeah.
You gotta find somewhere in the middle to sit in.
Yeah.
Kittens fighting in Ukraine.
Yeah.
No, that would be bad. Okay, edit that. That was a bad idea.
Hey, maybe they're really good. You don't know. They got more natural weapons than we do.
I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I worry about the future, the kids. But
it's tough, and I think that's. I mean, get back to comedy a little bit. That's why I think there's such a huge. It seems to be such a huge boom in interest in comedy because people just need some sort of relief.
Yeah.
Of all the
I
shit.
love the art form.
It's very cool. Yeah.
There's three things that I think have kept power accountable. Journalism was always there to like show us the truth, challenge authority. Rock and roll would always challenge authority, and the comedians would always challenge authority.
It still seems
and
to
I think
be
that's a very important part of our culture.
Absolutely.
And we're losing it. We were losing it. I think journalism is struggling.
Losing it a little bit. Yeah.
Rock and roll, like music doesn't really talk about social issues much anymore.
It's not the
But the comedians, I think, are kind of holding the torch for all three of those groups right now.
Right now, probably more.
The music industry is kind of like, because you don't get big bands anymore. You don't get this whole sort of like you don't get something like the Beatles that have this influence.
Yeah,
anymore.
talking about peace and stuff like that. You don't have that anymore.
No, it's.
But you do get comedians. You're right. You get
comedians are pushing the limit.
It seems like in the last 5 years, even more so.
Yeah,
it's almost resurged into that style of comedy where it's like, let's see where this line is and push it a little bit.
And I think we need that.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it's I've always been a big consumer of comedy since I was a kid. I only started probably right before COVID, whatever that was, 3 or 4 years ago.
It's like 5 now.
Is it that? Okay, so 5 years.
Because
I remember I just started and it hit, so I just like had this big gap of like I just kind of gotten the bug, and then I couldn't do it.
All I remember is washing our groceries and Tiger King.
Yeah,
it's a blur.
Horrible times.
Yeah. So, what was your like big influences? What comedian was it that you like looked up to when you were young?
When I was young, so a lot of it was like I had really cool, funny uncles.
Yeah,
and they
drunk uncles.
Just who kind of showed me stand up, and then all of a sudden I'm like. I have a computer now, and I'm like downloading or trying to figure out how to download comedy sets and stuff. But it was like early ones were George Carlin,
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle.
Boy, was George Carlin onto some shit. He has called some stuff. If he was still alive now, oh my goodness.
And a lot of Carlin was like, funny wasn't necessarily first.
Right.
He was
he
at
had
a
some
point in his
shit to
career. He's
say.
like, I got some stuff to say. So as a kid, sometimes like a lot of that flew over my head.
Yeah.
But I think it was more like his passion when he was doing it. It was like, oh my god, that was it. Really,
and the way he tells it as well, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And just like he this is what he believes, and he flies right into it. And it's just like he got into this tempo and this rhythm, and how he
He's
was
so earnest with it, isn't
big
he?
time. So that I think it was more.
And he was, like you said, he was funny, but that wasn't his number one mission.
No, and I think you see that right now with like Chappelle.
Yeah. It was
Because
keeping people accountable.
He was big for me.
Yo, Dave Chappelle's the king.
But early on, his early stuff was just hilarious.
Yeah.
And now he's like
Well, he's an older man
big
with
time
kids.
Yep.
And
He's
sees
like,
the
I've had
world.
my success and I've done my and now like this is what I want to say. So
And it's funny, he's even more successful now.
and it's still fun.
Financially, I believe.
I
Yeah.
find him still funny.
Oh, yeah.
But I think he's at a point now where maybe the funny's not put first and it's more like that.
But what
crowd
I'm
side.
saying is he's financially being rewarded even more than before.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah.
Just because he's being more earnest now.
Yeah, probably.
Because I think he walked away from the Chappelle show contract for $40 million. Then when he came back 20 years later, Netflix gave him $20 million or $40 million for 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's doing all right.
He's doing fine.
He's doing all right.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about the price of
Yeah.
groceries like the rest of
Yeah,
us.
but
Probably.
he
Probably
really
not.
pushes the
I
limits
think he
and
lives in like
challenges
Ohio
things.
or something.
Yeah, he
Just-
does.
yeah.
I think he owns like most of the town.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's doing just fine.
Doing all right. Yeah.
So yeah, I like him and Brian Regan. I always thought was hilarious. With
Not familiar.
They're completely different. Brian Regan's clean and like very physical, and just they're all very different from kind of the other things I listen to. But I always found him
It's always impressive when someone can be clean and hilarious. Like Jim
It's
Gaffigan
very funny.
is killer.
It's tough. It's
Yeah.
it's a different, but the realm of possibilities is in the comedy world is certainly more open to you if you can work clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a different skill. I mean, it's a different kind of
Totally.
comedy. A lot of it. You can do less of the shock stuff, right?
Big time, yeah.
Well, Bill Cosby was always clean.
Yeah, until he wasn't.
Yeah, that's yes, he was. And they always say like
He didn't swear.
they always say those are the guys you gotta watch out for. They're hiding something.
And
if they're
not
bad.
only was he clean, he would shame people who
for
weren't.
not. Oh yeah,
yeah. And then go drug somebody.
yeah. It was
Yeah,
wild.
Yeah. But I mean, some of my favorite comedians are not clean. I've got some really favorite comedians that aren't, some really, really ones that aren't, and like it's different.
Who do you really like?
Like the clean someone who doesn't swear and stuff when he's on stage is Bill Bailey. I don't know if you're familiar with him. I listen to a lot of British comedy because obviously. Right? But yeah, so Bill Bailey is one of my absolute favorites.
Okay.
He's clean and family friendly, but very, very funny.
Like I would say, like me personally, I don't swear a lot, or I try not to swear a lot. But I like the concepts. I like to kind of
Edgy.
push.
Still pretty edgy.
I mean, if you want to use that term, I like to push the odd boundary.
Yeah.
But I don't want like the F word or something like that to be the punch.
Yeah.
It's the premise or I want to be the laugh is the joke, not the shock factor.
Right.
Because that is a separate whole thing of comedy, right? That is a whole side of comedy, that whole shock value thing of just like,
Yeah, and I mean, and to each their own, and there's lots of people on all ends of the spectrum that are very funny. But like, yeah, for me, that certain words and stuff can be funny no matter where you put them. But if you take that away, is it still funny? And sometimes a good swear word in the right spot can definitely add to it
if you don't expect it.
to a joke. But
But you can add to it rather than it being the punchline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I grew up. My hero growing up was Richard Pryor. I was raised on Richard Pryor. I grew up in a black neighborhood. Richard Pryor was like the king. He was the greatest.
I mean, he's still way up there in terms of
I remember
Mount Rushmore. I would say he's probably
Yeah.
on most people's.
My uncles would have the records. Remember, you used to buy comedy on records. Remember the Bill Cosby record and the Richard Pryor records. Yeah, and I wasn't supposed to be listening because it was dirty, but I would sneak out in the hallway and listen at night.
I mean, some of those guys have just lasted lasted through time. But comedy, some of it doesn't age well at all. And yeah, some of that stuff.
Richard Pryor's still good though.
I mean, he's very good.
It's held up.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I've always like consumed a lot of it. Never, I don't know why, I just never thought of trying it. I don't think there was probably a lot of access to it where I grew up necessarily. Yeah, so I was just, and being funny was always definitely like a mechanism I used throughout my life to, people please or get out of situations or try and be liked or whatever. And just subconsciously, that was always that was always well in use in my life. But I'm glad I tried it. And now it's the first time I've had whatever, I don't know if you want to call it an art form, but
it is an art form,
a place
for sure.
it's a
creative outlet.
A creative outlet.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great word for it. It's the first time I had a creative outlet. Sit down and write jokes, and I
think that's great. Especially like if you're working on the farm, this kind of monotonous, doing the same thing over and over and over again for hours and hours at a time. It's great to have like a way to entertain your brain where you're creating something that might come out, 6 months from now. That joke kind of, has
like
life.
I've got
an
a
audience
list
and
of stuff that like it's an idea that pops in my head and I just throw it in there. And sometimes I'll look back when I go to write and it's like, well, I don't even know what that means. But and then sometimes I'll just like, and then I'll write a joke on it. And one thing about here, like there's no really where to perform unless you go to Halifax. Halifax, there's a mic every night. So if you had a ticketed show on a Saturday, you could go Tuesday to Thursday and try this joke that you just wrote and tweak it. And then by the time you have your ticketed show, you've got a joke that's going to work for these people that have paid to see you. And at the end of the day, like you want to go up there and do your stuff, but when people are, especially now, money's tight, when people are paying to go see a show,
it's got to be good.
You want it to be good for you and for them. And so here I find it's difficult because like there's no open mics here, which we might talk about.
That's what we're going to get to.
So like I found a lot of the time I will try and write to completion, which is difficult, so that if I go up to Yuck Yucks in Halifax to a full house and I'm going to do this joke for the first time.
Right, that's risky.
Like, all right, well, I want to make sure I haven't tested it. Sometimes I haven't even said it out loud before. So that can be tricky.
And your wife doesn't want to just listen to it.
No,
practice every night.
She doesn't think I'm funny, so that's... But, no, she's great, but it's, it's a lot.
I did my first set here last fall. I did like a 10-minute set. It was terrifying.
10 minutes is
a lot.
Unbelievable
Way
for
too
your
much.
first time.
Way too much. Way too much.
How much prep went into that?
Oh, weeks.
Okay. Yeah. So you had it written out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dan let me do...
Sure.
Because you've performed here before.
I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple times.
I remember you getting up there talking shit about my lights.
Oh, yeah. Probably, yeah. They're great lights, but sometimes you just got to...
You have something to say about these lights? Okay.
I like these lights.
You like these? Yeah.
No, it's just me and you here, and you're in reaching distance. I like these lights.
That's a good response.
I like these lights a lot. Yeah.
Talking shit about my lights.
But honestly, as you start doing comedy, one thing, like if you can bring people into that room, whether it's a comment about the lights, it doesn't have to be funny, but the fact that you're commenting like real time, people, I don't know, it's the reason why crowd work's so big right now.
Yeah, it is.
Like if you can relate to someone people with that moment, they love it. So it doesn't even have to be. Yeah. Looking back, it's probably not like if you did it again somewhere else, it's not that funny because it's just so specific to that moment. But people love knowing that even though you're the one on stage of the mic, that you're in that room with them. Yeah. And it's hard to do that because crowd work can be difficult.
It doesn't always fly.
It doesn't always fly.
But I think it shows a person's real intelligence. You got to be clever and you got to be quick to really make that shit up on the fly with an audience.
There's a lot of comfort in material that is prepared and has worked for you. There's so much comfort in that because you know where the laugh is, you know the timing of it, you've written it, done it, whatever. Crowd work or going off the fly, there's an unknown to it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know how it's going to work out. You don't know how people are going to respond. You don't know where it's going to go. And you're relying on your brain and how quick it fires.
But and in a way, the audience, I mean, they've come there for the reason to laugh.
Yeah, for
They've
sure.
got
For the most part.
babysitters or whatever. Yeah, most of them have
people
come there to have a good time.
Yeah.
It's not like you just walk into a random room and trying to make strangers laugh.
No,
really.
But it is interesting, like, say when you do go to like a Yuck Yucks, where it's a comedy crowd for the most part, and or you go to like a show in a rural spot like here. Sometimes it's not necessarily comedy savvy people. It is a different vibe, which is fine and great.
I think we've been doing it almost 2 years now, and the shows have been getting better and better and bigger, and the audience, I think, has matured.
You probably have similar people returning to see shows too, right? So then it's like, all right, they're getting an appreciation for the art form too.
Yeah, we've done it like every couple months for almost 2 years now. And Dan Henriken, shout out to Dan, he's been hosting every one.
Dan's
and
awesome.
He has come so far. Like his sets, just in the 2 years that I've been watching him, he's gotten so much better.
He's
killing it.
He's a great comic. Yeah. But it is, even when I first started, Dan was already headlining and into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can really come a long way in it, and a couple
he's putting in the reps. He's doing a lot of shows,
and it takes doing shows and doing a lot of sets. And he's a fully working comic. He's got shows every weekend. I'm doing 2 shows with him in October here in the Valley at some wineries, so it should be fun. He's hilarious.
I saw him and Travis Lindsay
also
the
great.
second to the last show at Barely's. Yeah, I was trying to go to the last show because they do them on Wednesday night, but I got COVID that week and had to change my plans.
So they're moving locations.
Yeah,
Travis, another guy who's just like
killer.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's just on.
And those two are like working off each other a lot now too. They've worked together so much. It was hilarious.
When you're comfortable with somebody and you've performed with them enough, you can certainly start to do that. Yeah,
it's pretty cool to see the scene developing.
Halifax has a big scene now.
Yeah. I think there's a new dedicated club opening soon.
Yeah, Halifax Live, it's called.
Halifax Live,
and they've done their soft launch, so they've had shows every weekend.
Yeah.
It's I think they have Brian Belleville coming in their first weekend, then Todd Barry's coming, which is cool. I mean, I don't know if you know Todd Barry, but he's
Canadian.
No, he's I think he's based out of New York. He's from Florida, but he's been on Letterman and Conan.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, he's very prolific and is a huge get for Halifax area for sure. So it certainly seems to
Tom Green's making some rounds
Tom
this
Green's,
fall?
Yeah, I think he's at the auditorium there. And
so
there's lots of big comics coming in, and there's tons of great comics in Halifax who, when I have shows down here, that's who I draw from. Like, you don't have to go far to get, there's so many comics in Halifax that have all done, Just for Laughs and the Halifax Comedy Fest, and they're on CBC. Like, they write for This Hour's 22 Minutes. Like, there's lots of great comics in Halifax, and there's definitely a big scene that's brewing there. So that's not that far away. And
it's cool to see what can happen, right? Because there's probably some great comedians that haven't even started yet.
Well, I mean, that was everybody at one point. Yeah,
exactly. So like when I got into the bar business, a lot of it was because, I love beer and food and music. I've tried to do live music here. It's never really flown for some reason, but the comedy nights are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm a huge comedy fan. So I really want to lean into that. And like this podcast studio is kind of like phase 1 in the building project. This room out here we're developing for like an event space.
Oh, cool.
So, because right now we have to wait till we close over there. Like we're open till 9. We get the dinner crowd out, get the comedy crowd in. It's a big hassle, and it goes late.
The turnover is tough.
Yeah. So, and people don't always want to go out when it starts at 9. It goes a good solid 2 hours. Not everybody wants to do that. So the plan is to have this room here. This will be the green room and podcast studio. I'll have lots of comedians on is the goal. Have a stage out there, and we'll be able to do the whole thing. And awesome. I really want to build a comedy epicenter here, a hub. Sure. And because I think if more people are working together and sharing ideas and helping each other and helping each other with taglines and writing tips and stuff like that, we could build a cool scene here.
I think so. Yeah. There's comics here that are in various stages of starting out. There's a couple guys that started before I did, and that opened in a lot of the shows that I put on, and they're great guys. But same thing, like there's just nowhere to really perform. So I even having an open mic night somewhere to start would, for me, help me try and say these jokes out loud before I bring them to these, some ticketed shows or something.
It would help me in 3 ways, because I want to do comedy as well. I've only done one set, but I want to do like just a couple minutes here and there and just work on stuff. And I want to have podcast audience.
Yep.
And I want to have people in my bar. So it can help me in many ways.
Yeah.
Ben's working on some stuff. Gavin Robichaud, the bartender that was on a few weeks ago, he was working on some stuff. The guy that has the Drink Nova Scotia Dry podcast, Ross, I think you know him, Ross
Palmer?
No.
Ross.
He has a podcast, craft beer, and he's one of the ghosts on the Ghost Walk.
Chapman.
Okay. Yeah. He reached out recently.
He reached out to me.
He's done some
about stand up, but I don't think I'm not sure I've met him in person. But I do know.
Who meets anyone in person?
I mean, that's not necessary.
Yeah, so we got a bunch of people that are.
I still prefer the in-person medium person.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that are interested in dabbling in a few minutes of comedy. I think it could go.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you need is somebody to kind of host it.
Yep.
And
it's just like karaoke. The good ones are entertaining, and the bad ones can be just as entertaining.
Sure, yeah, why not?
You much watched Kill Tony. You've seen?
Yeah, I have lots of times. Yeah, it's that's huge now.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool. It takes a lot of guts to get up there. We talked about that fear of talking in front of people that a lot of people have. But I think there's people in this realm of comedy that want to, I think for the most part, want to see other people succeed and be in it, and are supportive and helpful. And at the end of the day, the worst thing that could happen is you have an awkward couple minutes,
right?
And nobody will remember.
Nobody's throw tomatoes at you,
and no one's if they're
tomatoes
not
are too expensive now. No one's throwing.
100%. Those cherry, especially not those cherry tomatoes.
Yeah.
But no one who's not willing to get up there is going to give you a hard time by getting up there and doing poorly. No. And anyone who is willing to get up there has a level of respect for the fact that you were able to do it. So. And
people can always say, I tried it. Like, I've only ever done one set, but I'm like, I did it. Something I wanted to do, and I did it.
That's the thing.
Like, I'm proud of myself.
Yeah, you got to
be. It's a scary thing. Yeah.
It's overcoming a fear kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do, and I admire anybody who's willing to give it a shot.
And we need to laugh, right? Like, I remind my staff, like, we're not really in the restaurant business. We're like in the mini vacation business, because people work hard. They've got bullshit going on in their lives. There's been people coming here that just got a recent cancer diagnosis. Sure. There's people who have lost babies. There's people who lost loved ones. There's people, first dates, bad relationships. There's people that come in to get away from
need a break.
The bullshit that they're facing in life. They come in to laugh because they don't want to think about the wars and the bad economy and maybe that they're behind on their mortgage payments, something like that. We need these things. We need a little bit of escape from the bullshit.
Absolutely. And comedy's great for that.
It's great for that, yeah.
And everybody who you see, whether they blew your socks off and they were hilarious and awesome, everybody has bombed horribly.
Yeah.
And, if you've been doing it long enough, everyone, for the most part, is probably killed and done awesome. And I bombed horribly. Yeah. But I've also had, like, I remember one time I was down at Annapolis Royal or something doing a show. And I did this. I had a prostate exam, so I got this bit about this prostate exam because I'm not really old enough to have started getting prostate exams yet. But anyway, I had
just did it for the fun?
I'll do the bit for you sometime. So I just had this, and it was an uncomfortable moment for me, and my outlet was to write a bit about it, and I did, and it was great. And a guy came up to me after the show, and he's like, "So I had prostate cancer." And I was like, oh shit, like racking my brain, like, did I say something that was, and he was just like, I just really like appreciate you making light of it for your situation. And like really, it really made me feel better about it looking back on it. And like, I wish there was like a conference with people who had prostate cancer. You come tell this bit, and I was like, oh my god, like I would.
Wow.
You have no idea that's what it.
Yeah.
And so like those moments right there are like huge wins.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the fact that I was able to make you feel some sort of lightness about this brutal situation you went through is like is an awesome feeling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the goal obviously is to be funny, but trying to relate to people is certainly like I talk a lot about just like my life and my perspective on things, and if people can relate to that and get some laughs out of that, and then yeah, that's awesome to be able to share that and have people take positive things away from it. It's not always like that. Like, I'm sure I've pissed people off. I try not to. That's never the goal.
No,
of course.
No, you're trying to have people.
You're trying to make people
have a good
laugh.
time.
Yeah, help people have a good time. But like, there's been moments
you can offend
like that.
people with the most innocent of things now.
Oh,
Anytime you open your mouth, especially now in 2024, you're running the risk of pissing off somebody.
It's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, you don't even have to say anything bad. You just have to just say it at the wrong time.
Live. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can just live and piss people off pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and I'll try not to dwell on stuff like that too much. But I mean, I just have anxiety about that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what.
Yeah, probably shouldn't. We have a back door here. You can escape. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, no. But I just like I'll leave social situations.
Yeah.
Like, did that person know I was joking and like just overthink shit that no one's
You're a
thinking about.
compassionate person. You don't want to hurt anybody.
You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and like sometimes, you get if you're a person who's trying to be funny at times, like that's always kind of been my go-to. Whether and that can be annoying at times, I'm sure.
But if we have something like this, and you're hosting, or I'm hosting, or we're co-hosting, or whoever's hosting, it's good to remind the audience. People are just we're trying here.
Yeah.
They might step on some toes.
That's
No
part of
one's
the
trying to hurt anybody.
host job.
Yeah.
Is to like
to set the
bar, and you're the host. Hosting is interesting because it's not you're doing stand up within it, but you're like when you're not necessarily an open mic, but when you're hosting a show, the vibe of the show is your responsibility. So you might have to sacrifice like maybe doing the jokes and stuff you want to do. Your job is to set the stage for the comics on the show to have the best stage set for them possible, or the best opportunity for success. So your job is to make sure they're ready for the comics, and you might have to sacrifice maybe some of the material you want to do or whatever to like get the energy in the right place for who's coming up.
Yeah.
And that's your prime job.
If someone gets offended, they probably won't come back next week.
That's true.
Yeah. So you will cultivate an audience for it, right?
You will. And I think for the most part, like there's obviously exceptions, but for any comics around here that I've seen, like they just want people to have a good time. They're not there to hurt anybody's feelings. People are seeing all these crowd work clips and stuff online now, and they're like afraid to sit in the front row. And I'm like, no one's going to just pick on you. Yeah. A lot of the time, there's stuff coming up from the crowd, and the comic engages with that. Yeah. But it's based on what's coming at them. Yeah. The most part, a feature who's there to do 15 to 20 minutes, they're going in there, they got their 15 to 20 minutes that they want to do. Yeah. And they might go into the crowd a little bit, but they're not going to engage with you negatively. Unless you engage with them negatively, then they have to respond to that. But
I saw Theo Vaughn at the Great Canadian Festival.
Yeah,
There's 9,000 people there. And he picks this guy out of the front row, calls him a pedophile, puts him on the big screen for 9,000 people to see.
So I did. I run a monthly show at Patty's in Kentville, and bring different comics from the city. And these people were afraid to sit in the front row. And there was this traveling comic coming through from the States, and I didn't really know his stuff too well. And they were afraid to sit in the front. I was like, I give the same spiel all the time. Like, no one's going to pick on you. It's fine. Oh. Anyway, he was very much a crowd work comic, and he was hilarious, but could be a little brutal. And just decimated these people that I was like convinced that they were going to be fine sitting in the front.
They never trusted.
And I was like, oh shit.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. But that was the only time it bit me in the ass. But I mean, for comedians, they just want people there to provide the atmosphere and to have people to make laugh. Like that's the whole we do it for us, but at the same time we're trying to bring some joy to the people in the room,
Some
and
joy,
that's some joy and some laughs.
Thought provoking topics.
It's good for everybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
push some
should
boundaries,
be.
talk about some shit that's going on in
Yeah.
your life or the world or
Yeah.
whatever.
And I think for a while people were really hypersensitive, and I think that's changing a little bit. I think there's some pushback against that now. I think people are a little more
And in comedy too, like
free to know that, okay, it's just a joke.
big time.
It's just a joke.
And it's so out there now with like
Yeah.
social media and clips,
Yeah.
and like generally people are a lot more comedy savvy now.
Yeah.
Whereas they probably weren't exposed to enough to be that way before. But now I think people it's booming, and there's a lot of it out there, and people generally, I mean, there's still going to be people get offended at lots of stuff, but
yeah.
for the most part, I think people have an understanding.
Yeah.
There's always outliers.
Younger me worried about offending people. The older me doesn't really care that much anymore. I really
That does come
I
with
know
age.
It's about my intentions. I don't intend on hurting anybody, so I can just.
There's a lot to be.
You only do your best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for the most part, people are good. Again, everyone's going through their lives and their shit. And some days you catch somebody on a bad day, and it's easy to like respond with anger, but it's like, oh yeah, maybe their dog just died or something. Like you don't know. They're probably just having a bad day, caught in a bad moment. For the most part, I don't think people love conflict that much, and they don't aren't trying to piss people off and be grumpy.
It's a beautiful thing though to work hard and craft something, be creative, have that creative outlet, have that healthy dopamine shots of working on something, and then present it to an audience and have them laugh and enjoy, and then tighten it up and work on it and develop it even more and more and more. Like that's a cool thing.
It's awesome. I love it. I'm happy I found it. It's been awesome for me personally and my own brain that I sit in by myself a lot. Because
it's good to put that horsepower with anxiety, right? Like if you're doing something that's like day-to-day job, monotonous job, the brain can just sometimes pick on you. I suffer with anxiety. That brain, all that horsepower in the brain, I'm not that smart, but there's a lot of processing power there that's like picking at you sometimes. But if you can put that while you're doing this job or doing this task, like driving or whatever, you can put that brain to work actually with something
positive or creative.
That's going to bring joy to other people. That's a much better thing than just sitting around thinking about how miserable you are, how you failed, or this
I sit there idle for too long, and then it's just like I just start picking myself apart for sure. Which is, I mean, I think a lot of people are
a lot of comedians
especially
struggle with that, and that's probably why.
Yeah, they
defense mechanism or processing thing or whatever.
I think so. Yeah, it seems to be that common thread. There's not a lot of. They might try to put this out, but there's not a lot of cocky comedians. I don't think. Not underneath the surface.
No, they're insecure, scared.
Yeah. Which is you go up there and you get those immediate laughs that reassure you that and it's the same. Like I did it. And I always used, like I was saying before, like I always use comedy as that like mechanism, like just trying to be liked or whatever. And I don't know if they like me, but if they're laughing, then they like me right now.
Yeah.
I think is probably, looking back and trying to analyze it, which is, I don't know, kind of a weird thing to do, but that's probably what it was. It's like in that moment that people are laughing, they're like on your side for now. And that's a comforting.
Well, it's a good way to diffuse things.
Yeah.
Right. 100%. If there's tension, it's.
Whenever I got in trouble or I was in social situations.
Surrounded by bullies.
Sure. Anything like, just like trying to make friends or like in a stressful situation, like laughter is just kind of like what comes out or tries to. And it's saved me and it's got me in trouble. I put my foot in my mouth all the time. And again, there's never any malice in it.
No.
But like sometimes like, my wife will just shake her head like, what are you doing?
Well,
I didn't mean it.
Right.
Like that. And then I'll go home and think about it for 2 days. So it's like,
bombed.
Yeah. You bombed in public with your grandmother.
And your wife's a politician, right?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah, she's.
You never embarrassed her, I'm sure.
No. She. I try and keep my mouth closed at important events and stuff.
Yeah.
She's awesome, and she's like well known in the community,
Yeah.
and does a lot. She works really hard for this community that she grew up in and was raised in, and she's a lot smarter and more capable than I am. So I lucked out there.
That's good.
Yeah, you got to punch above your weight, or what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the whole point.
That's the point. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I've heard once a definition of comedy is like something that's true but surprising. You ever heard that?
I haven't, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Something's funny. It's like, that's true, but I didn't see it coming.
A lot of the funniest stuff is like something very obvious that everybody knows is true. Mm-hmm. And it could be so simple and in everybody's face, but somebody just said it out loud in a way that's like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the best stuff because everybody relates to it.
Yep.
Everybody knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But no one said it out loud before.
Right.
So, and that is hilarious because everyone relates to it. So yeah,
that's me, the funniest things I come up with is when I've smoked a little bit of weed. Because I look at the world completely different, or a little like a mushroom microdose, something like that. Because the way I process things is completely different. So if I smoke a little weed, take a mushroom, I'm just putting notes on my phone the whole time.
That could be, yeah. And then
when I'm sober a couple days later, I'll say, yeah, that was terrible, or there's something there.
So do you write a lot now?
Yeah.
Like, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have folders and folders on my phone, notes.
So you're ready for an open mic?
I'd have to have a little some time to prepare.
Sure, but you got
to organize it. But
you got a plethora.
Of I get so many high notes.
and you're doing this. You're doing the same. Like you're writing and.
It sounds like I have fewer notes, but yes.
And you've never done stand up?
No, but I actually. Talking in front of people, although it does give me a bit of anxiety, I'm not one of these people who has a terrible, dreadful fear of it. I've done little bits and pieces of it over the years, and it's usually gone okay. So,
and the British are a very funny people anyway. That's kind of inherent in the culture.
Mm-hmm. I do like British comedy. I think it is very different than North American comedy. It's very much more sarcastic, a little bit more kind of like close to the bone a lot of the time, a little bit meaner, actually. But...
Yeah. Your Jimmy Carrs and your...
Jimmy Carr, I'm very familiar with Mr. Carr. He's the one who does crowd work very well.
He does a lot of that, yes. I was a big soccer guy growing up and currently, so I very much watched a lot of Premier League.
Oh, yeah.
And when I played soccer at university, we had a lot of guys from the UK come on scholarship and play. And just very familiar with the culture and the banter and all of the and
there's a lot of the banter. I think that's where a lot of it comes from because that's where a lot of it's that's a very English thing to sort of when you relate to people through humor very much so. Mm-hmm. If you can't you that's the entire basis of my relationship with all the people who worked in the stores near me and everything when I was living there was all based on humor and jokes.
And here I guess we'd call it busting balls or whatever you call it, but that is definitely a love language I would have with my friends.
Exactly. You make fun of the people you love the most. If I don't like you, I'm not making fun of you.
No.
I'm ignoring you.
I might be nice to you.
Yeah. I won't even.
But if I'm going to be purely nice to you, polite to you, we're not close.
No.
My best friends, I'm being horribly mean to them all the time.
I've heard something like that's how, especially men, they'll pick on each other to see if they're humble enough to take it. And it's a kind of thing where you'll find out if you can trust this person or not. Is their ego in check enough to be there for you in a pinch kind of thing? That's why men kind of bust each other's balls and make fun of each other. Soldiers, construction guys, all that stuff. These are life or death stuff. Yeah. If the guy can't take a joke, you can't count on him.
No. And there's a difference between lighthearted jokes or busting balls with your friends and malice or trying to hurt
That's
somebody.
right. Yeah,
and it's so easy to you can detect it right away when there's a smidge of you're trying to hurt somebody.
And there is a fine line sometimes between that, right?
Yeah.
You can. There are certain lines you try not to. You don't cross really. But obviously, when you're busting balls with people, you'll occasionally say something incredibly stupid and incredibly hurtful because
you're walking that line all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you cross it by accident, and most part people recognize that. And you're all right.
And most time people are cool about it, but it is something that you have to be aware
of. For sure. But that's, a very important part, and a lot of relationships, but male relationships probably specifically.
Yeah.
And then you encounter someone in your that you start working with or whatever, and maybe they don't do that or can't handle, and I'm just like, well, I don't know how to interact with you in a way where I'm like
Too
myself
serious.
now.
Yeah.
So then, people just like would say I was like standoffish or something. Like, well, no, I just don't know how to be what you need me to be. I don't know how to act like you need me to act. So I'm just gonna act. I'm just gonna not act at all. And then now I'm just quiet. So that's not good either. But
I'm excited to see what could happen here.
I think
Really
that'd be awesome.
And now
to
it's
just
on
have a
public
space.
record, so we got to do it.
Yeah, for
No
sure.
excuses now.
We'll
I mean,
probably-
it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It's
No.
like pick a night that you're slow, and that you could use some more people in.
Yep.
Say, hey, we're doing this night. You need a microphone and a speaker.
Yeah, I've been looking at sound systems.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Facebook Marketplace.
Sure.
Yeah.
And just get the word out. And if you perform, you get a free beer or something
Yeah.
that brings people in to perform.
Yeah.
And it could be like people coming in, like no cover or whatever.
No,
just
exactly.
or if they want to pay what you can, if you want to contribute to something.
Yeah.
And then there's no stipulations or no restrictions to bringing people in the
Maybe
door.
have like a little sign up sheet or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could even be online ahead of time, so they're like, "Hey, I'm
Right.
going to do my 2 to 3 minutes, and I've shown up, and I know I know I'm going to get on." And I mean,
Yeah. And if it's a half an hour, it's a half an hour. If
Yeah.
it's 2 hours, it's 2 hours. We'll know a little bit in advance.
absolutely. And then you get some people that are maybe more experienced come down and
Yeah.
do it, and then they can go for longer and mess
Yeah.
around or whatever until people are comfortable
Exciting.
stepping on. So
Maybe start with once a month, and
once a month is
And when you got
Go
the
from
event
there.
space across here, it's not going to matter so much.
I would love to do it more often once we get there. But maybe we can get to a place where we have multiple hosts that are doing it like every other week or every week
Yeah.
or something like that. But we'll see. Yeah,
I think
see.
it's certainly something you wouldn't have trouble finding people to perform at,
Yeah.
and I think people come out.
Yeah. Joe Rogan's got his comedy mothership in Austin, Texas, and they have so many people moving there to just do comedy.
Yeah.
And their 2 rooms are full all the time. That they're, I think, looking at buying another theater in Austin just so they can
That place
service more people.
That place is booming, like just
Yeah.
like sold out all the time, and
Yeah.
obviously huge comics going through there.
And I think that they've done a really good job by severing the comedy world from Hollywood, because a lot of the comedians were always trying to get movies or sitcoms, and they weren't pushing the limits very much. So now that they're in Austin, and they're not beholden to the Hollywood at all. They don't give a shit.
No,
They're making all kinds of money from podcasting and comedy. There's no filter, which is what we need now.
Yeah, and especially in
I
the age of
think-
the internet, we can do it.
Yeah, yeah.
getting into the weeds of comedy now, but like there's always that thing with like the East Coast or the New York comics and the LA comics, and
Yeah.
just completely different styles.
Because
And
New York was more edgy,
often,
often,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. And
because they weren't trying to get sitcoms.
no, and like shorter form and punchier, and it was just such a, or obviously I'm not in the New York scene,
Yeah.
but it's just from listening about it and all that stuff. It's just like there's so many people there trying to make it, and you gotta be funny in the short amounts of time on
Yeah.
stage, and but I think what it used to, like, stand up wasn't always respected, so it's just like, all right, well, I'm doing this now, but sitcom is
Right.
that's the goal. I'm doing stand up to do this
That's when
thing,
you're
but now
legit.
people are like, well, I'm doing stand up to be a stand up,
Yeah.
and
'Cause you
there's
can make
respect
a-
on that by itself now.
Yeah.
So that I think that's shifted.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's so you're seeing like sitcom isn't the end. Like stand-up comedies now can be the end.
You
can
got,
be the end goal.
you got stand-up guys that are saying no to movies and no to big
Yeah,
opportunities like that. They don't give a shit.
The skill doesn't necessarily translate, though. I
doesn't.
mean, you've seen that. It's like
Yeah,
just because you're
doesn't.
funny on stage doesn't mean you're going to be funny in a movie, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
you can't just
Different skill.
doesn't mean you can
Totally
make this script funny.
Yeah, it's like-
Yeah. And vice versa. Just because you can act and make a script funny doesn't mean you can go on stage and
Right.
exactly. It's
stand up.
very different. Yeah, it's like it's brutal, and but it's immediate as well, right? You don't get a second chance. So like you fucked up a joke. You fucked up a joke.
Yeah.
You got to move on and deal with the crowd and just
It's
No, I
it's
loved-
very immediate.
I loved Richard Pryor movies when I was a kid. I loved that shit. What, The Toy? Do you remember The Toy?
I don't know.
It's like this rich family.
I should have lied and said I did and nodded along, but I'm just
So
gonna be
Richard
honest with you.
Pryor is like having a hard time getting a job, So he's like cleaning at a toy shop, and this rich family comes in, and the dad's like neglecting the little boy, and he says, "You can have anything you want, kind of buy off the kid's affection, right?"
Yeah.
And he says, and Richard Pryor is the night cleaning lady. He's dressed up like a woman or something, and he says, "I want him because he made me laugh." So then the guy's like, "All right, I'll give you all this money to come and live with us and entertain my kid." That's the plot of the movie.
Wow.
That's part of the movie. I love that.
That
movie
wouldn't
when
be
I
a
was
plot
kid.
these days, would it? I feel
No,
like
it wouldn't. No, it's a little out
I
there.
miss those
Comedy,
days.
mo-
But I loved that movie when I was a kid.
comedy movies have kind of taken there was like a lull where there wasn't any big hitters there for a while.
Yeah.
But hopefully that comes back because there were some great ones in the
Oh,
90s.
man. What was it? Superbad?
Superbad was great.
Blush just watching it.
Superbad that was one of the last ones that was like,
Yeah.
for me, was like, oh man, that was hilarious.
Fun
Yeah,
fact, Becca, the girl in the movie that he's trying to get to at the party, Martha, played by Martha McIsaac, is like a friend of mine. So when I was a youth pastor, she was in my small group. It was hosted in her house like every Wednesday
wow.
night. She was like one of my teenagers. She was on Emily of New Moon at the time on CBC. So she's been like a child star, and then she was on Superbad. So here, years later, when I'm a parent, I see Superbad's been like the #1 movie in Canada for like, it was months.
Well, I don't think
huge.
they knew that was going to be
No.
huge. Or
But
now
here I
probably
am
a
with
cult
little
classic.
kids. I go to the drive-in theater with my little kids to see this movie that this girl I know
Yeah.
is in, and the people at the drive-in are like, "Oh no, you can't bring kids in here." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like,
Yeah.
"No, you can't come in here." I'm like, "Well, how bad is it?" Like, "It's bad."
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken kids. to
So
see
this
that if I
sweet
had
young
seen
girl that I used to have in my youth group is now in like the craziest movie of all times.
That's, again, that.
Shout out to Martha. You'll probably not watch
That's
this,
cool.
but hey,
no,
Martha.
that's cool. That's very
Yeah.
cool. And it's like, it's a small world.
It is a small
We're
world.
reminded of that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think they probably, when they made that, they
No.
didn't know that how long ago was that now?
Oh, probably close to 20 years.
Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, my kids were babies.
So there's not many comedies that you look back 20 years later and we're like, oh,
it. 2007 is what it was from.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so not far off, 2017 years, something like that. So
Yeah.
that's
It's back there.
it's back there, and it's still like I'd watch that now. And,
Oh yeah, my kids love it now. I let them watch it now.
yeah, you don't probably have a choice in what they watch now, do you?
No,
Not this.
I quit trying to tell them what to do a long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, how can you control what kids watch now? You can't. They know how to set up the devices better than you do.
Yeah.
You can't tell a kid what
Not
to
in my
watch.
house. I mean,
So-
that's just she's 3.
You
That's about it.
wait 6 months, Ben.
But like, I mean, we're in a weird situation because like we grew up kind of not having so much technology, so kids have, on average, more knowledge of it. But actually, it's not going to be the same forever. And I don't think my daughter's going to know when she's 16. I don't think she's going to know better than I do. How
Spoken like a naive beginning parent.
I never thought that I would be like out of the know, whether it be like technology or pop culture or whatever. And even now, like my 9-year-old.
pop culture, I have no interest in pop culture, but technology, I think I'll be all right.
Sure, Ben.
But
She'll be showing you how to do stuff
We'll see.
before she goes to school. I promise you.
my 9-year-old will come home and say stuff. I'm like, oh wow, that's not ringing a bell right now.
Yeah.
And it's I never thought I'd get to that point. I'm already there.
Oh, I have to get my kids to like translate pop culture all the time. Like, what does that mean? What's going
It's-
on? Or I have to like pretend I know and then go like to the bathroom and like Google it.
Also, I'm just having
What's a bird?
I'm just having a flashback now that I think when you asked me how old my kids were, I think I said 8, 6, and 4, and he's 9.
Yeah.
So just edit that.
Okay,
first
forget
part.
what.
Yeah, so
Change that.
We'll dub it in really badly.
Yeah, really. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks
man.
for having me. I wasn't sure what to expect.
No, just talking shit, drinking beer.
As it got into it, I think it's felt a lot more just like a conversation. And
Yeah,
the
that's
stuff
what
was
it
kind
is.
of all the mics and stuff would kind of fade in the background.
Yeah.
At the start, I was like, oh,
No, I
trying
like
to
to
be
keep
constant.
it casual. And I think, like I said earlier, I think there's a loneliness epidemic. And that's probably why I listen to 6 or 8 hours of
I listen
podcasting
to
a day.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like action-packed content. It
Just
can
part of a
be
conversation.
Part of a conversation. You're working on a farm picking apples and just listen to guys talk shit about whatever. Like it's good.
It's
Fun.
Probably
And people consume it's consumed way more than like mainstream media. I mean, they need to change the name of mainstream media because not many people listen to it anymore.
No, I mean, even Trump was on Theo Vaughn's podcast.
Yeah, That was awesome.
Would you ever think that a presidential candidate and a
True.
Yeah.
ex-prime minister or president,
yeah.
would be on a podcast?
Yeah. And I was hanging out with Theo Vaughn. I was sitting on the same couch with Theo Vaughn like 3 days before that.
That's crazy.
I was like,
yeah.
what the hell?
So it's like that. I think that shows how
Yeah.
big it is now and
Yeah,
how many
huge.
people consume it.
He's got, I don't know how many millions of people listen to his podcast, but probably a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Millions and millions. Where like a big news media like Fox or CNN might get 500,000 views per show.
Is that all it is?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So it's really shifted. Like people
really
get their
shifted.
news.
Well, do you have cable?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Nobody
do you have
does.
cable?
No, I don't know.
I don't
anyone
have
who does.
cable.
I know. Who do I know who does?
Old people.
Do your parents have it?
Yeah, old
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Sorry, mom and dad, but old people have
My parents don't have
satellite.
cable.
Yeah.
They have like some satellite
yeah,
channels.
satellite.
But
But
it's-
cable or satellite, not many people have that anymore.
But it's
No.
been a while coming because, like, if you look at like the ratings for all of these shows that people have, they've been going down and down. And like shows that have been considered that would have been considered a success in the
Yeah.
the criteria has gone down and down. There's
Oh,
fewer and
for sure.
fewer viewers per show. It has been going down for a long time.
9 years
and
ago
they
now.
divided it by the number of channels as well.
9 years ago now, I was on MasterChef Canada. Even 9 years ago, the only people that recognized me were old people. It hasn't changed. It's only gotten worse.
You were on MasterChef?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
See,
And it was
you
like the
didn't- you
biggest.
didn't recognize
You
it.
didn't know because you don't have TV or cable.
Well, I
But
recognize
back
you
then,
from here.
It was like I think it was the highest rated show in Canada. It was 1.8 million viewers, which was huge at
And
the time.
cooking shows are still probably pretty big. They've just
It
kind of
was the
shifted
biggest
over.
genre, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you go back to like the 80s, if a show only got 50, there was shows that were canceled that got 15 million views. And now they brag, like it's unheard of for a show to have 15 million views. Like,
And
totally unheard of.
partly because of the internet, partly because they just divided all the channels up. Right?
Yeah, there's so many more channels.
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's so inconvenient to watch it, though.
Yeah.
Attention spans too are so much lower now. It's
Kind of. Like
For certain
because
stuff.
we're TikToking
Yeah.
and Reels, but then people will listen to like 3-hour podcasts. So it's,
Yeah,
but
but
you
I-
can still be active.
You can be active
While you're
doing
doing
that.
that.
Like
I'm not 100% sure about the whole attention span. I think we've always had short attention spans. I think as a species, because like we're saying, like, oh, people spend so much time on their phones, but people used to spend time at breakfast instead of looking at the phone. They were just reading the paper instead. I mean, it's not like
probably
we're-
right. Maybe there's just
We
easier
always-
avenues to
Yeah.
do something with that lack of
we
attention.
always
span.
think of like the people before us as different, and
Yeah.
no, I don't think it was so much like that.
I don't know.
I think there's always going to be something, and you can always pick and choose like examples, but I think
Yeah.
it's not as much as we think.
Well, they used to say television was rotting our brains. Remember?
Well, they said
Yeah.
that people were
Books or-
books are rotting our brain because people are going to forget how to tell stories. I mean, you know,
yeah,
it's
I
all
don't know.
like, you know,
That
there's
is kind
always-
of that is the telling stories has changed.
Yeah, I mean, there's written examples of people saying, "Oh, we should not teach people how to use pen and paper because they're going to forget how to use wax tablets." I mean, you know, like,
Technology is definitely changing. I mean, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and all that stuff is. the world's
nobody's
gonna
learning
change a lot.
cursive anymore.
Well, I was
No
just
one's
gonna
learning
say that
cursive.
like my kids won't learn cursive.
No.
Not that like I'm not
Yeah.
pissed about it.
You and
I'm
your
not
wife-
mad at the school board that my kids aren't gonna learn cursive.
You and
but-
your wife can write code that
Yeah.
the kids can't read.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't because my handwriting is terrible.
Your wife or your kid can
When I was
read
at
it.
school note taking, it was like printing that turned into cursive just so my pen wouldn't have to lift
Yeah.
off the. Yeah, it was more laziness.
I
than
just
it was
never
like-
took notes. Like, what's the point of writing it down if I can't remember it? Isn't the point of learning to
Could you
remember
remember it right off the bat?
I got a solid 77 average with never studying or taking notes.
That's perfect.
It's
never had
in
to
a
do anything.
book. You're given a book, right? And then you're told to take notes next to the book. Why do I have the fucking book?
Yeah.
Fair.
Like I
I-
could just look it up in the book. I remember you used to take notes, and I would take notes partly out of boredom, to be honest. But
I
like,
didn't
was just-
need I didn't need the notes to review them, but if I wrote it down in my own way,
That's
I
true.
remembered it by writing it down.
That's true. That would help me remember it, and I would.
I
like,
can throw
yeah,
the notes out after.
Yeah, that's
But
pretty
the
much.
fact that I wrote it out, I took it in and then wrote it out how I took it in. That was all I needed. So I didn't need the notes after that.
We're
That's
more understanding now how different people's brains work differently too.
Yeah, and hopefully less like in schools and whatnot. If somebody does learn a different way, there's
They're less judgmental. But
less judgmental and more like recognizing like okay,
Yeah.
this person may be verbal and this person may be visual, and so maybe I'll talk it out and write it on the board or whatever.
Like,
I mean, they're not writing on the board probably.
I started school in 1982 and I had a learning disability, and you were just like, in 1982, you didn't have a
We
chance.
don't. No, this is what we're doing.
I
If
had
you're not
teachers
fit
tell me
into
I'd
that.
never read, never graduate, never.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. 1982.
Now it's, well, I don't know. I'm not in the schools, but hopefully it's more accommodating
I think
to
it
people.
is.
I think it is too.
I think it is too,
There's a lot more recognition of not everybody's the same.
Well, the
Nobody's
brains
the
just
same.
work different.
Yeah.
I mean, Albert Einstein didn't speak till he was like 4 or something like that. They thought he was mentally challenged.
There's lots of people that may seem some way and have a ton to offer
Oh yeah.
if you
totally.
given the proper avenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what's great about the world now, and the opportunity to like specialize and internet to find your interests and stuff like that. Like it's so cool.
That is one benefit. Like there's a lot of people who may have been alone before, and they can find their communities a lot easier. People with like-minded interests, and I think that's one huge benefit of the way things are now. Is people can find their clan and their people.
learn to do anything.
Or learn to absolutely.
If you're a poorer kid and your parents can't afford guitar lessons, you don't need guitar lessons. You just need some kind of guitar and a YouTube channel.
Yep.
Like you can learn anything. I learned to brew while I was doing a job I didn't like, for free. I made a whole other career out of it. Like people can learn to do just about anything
100%.
if they have some ambition and some drive.
Learn about this stuff.
Yeah, I
Did you
just
set all this
Googled.
up?
I
Or was this
Googled.
you?
Yeah, we worked on this
Together,
for a
yeah.
while. Yeah, just Googled stuff and figured it out as we went.
I mean, it seems like a awesome setup. And
fooled
that's the
you into
truth.
thinking we're professional.
Well, I mean, it's and you were saying before, I don't remember if we were recording or not, but how like you put the work into setting this up.
Yeah.
Because if it was in your kitchen, it's easier to give up on it. Now you got a space
I've
that's
spent the time, energy, and money.
yeah.
Now
So
I
it's
got to
like,
do
well, now
it.
you got to do it.
Yeah.
And I got to do it.
And I think that was a huge move.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got lots of stuff going on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you give yourself an easy out,
Yeah.
you're just subconsciously going to take it a lot of the time.
And you don't ever really regret the projects you do finish, right?
Yeah.
No, pretty much never.
Or that you really carry on. You never regret, you've always even if it didn't work out like you planned, you've learned something and you've taken it to its natural conclusion. It's a positive.
Oppenheimer probably regretted.
Yeah.
Well,
I think he did.
I mean, that's
Really?
interesting.
I haven't watched the movie yet, but he probably was like, I wish I didn't maybe finish that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he literally did say that, didn't he? He was like,
Yeah.
So
Okay. I found one example.
one
It
example.
is an extreme example. At the same time, you can argue that it was a good thing because although, a lot of people died, it did bring the war to a close sooner, so there would have been balance.
And if he didn't do it, the Germans would have. Because the initial nuclear concept came from German scientists. So the Germans would have gotten. And I think the only reason they didn't get there first is because we had people sabotaging their efforts.
Which is quite a cool story in itself, actually.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool story.
Well, even
Or that's the propaganda, I believe. Anyway.
well, even the space race.
Yeah.
The Americans had no problem getting
Faking that moon landing to win the Cold War.
or bringing Germans over that to help with
or that Operation Paperclip or something, was it, when they
Was
stole
it?
the German?
Wait, maybe it was Russians.
No, it was a German. So the Russians and the Americans both scrambled to get because the Germans were way ahead on the rocket technology.
Yeah.
So they were scrambling to get these Nazis.
Yeah.
And instead of putting them through the court case and trying them, they brought them to their countries and rewarded them and paid them off and celebrated them.
Because they had a skill set.
Because they had a skill set.
Was required.
Yeah. I think they faked the moon landing to scare the Russians. I think they did. I think it was we pulled it off, so the Russians would think, oh, these guys are advanced and we're not going to win this nuclear war thing. And I think they convinced a lot of people to fake it to help intimidate them. I think so, but who knows?
What haven't we talked about yet?
I don't know.
I don't think the moon landing was fake.
You don't think it was fake?
No.
No?
Because you can fire lasers up there and fire them off a reflector and they can measure the light that comes back.
What's that got to do with anything?
Because they left there's a reflector up there that they left. That you can measure that it's there.
Oh, cool.
Oh, they went to the moon.
Did they go to the moon?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Or they set up a room like this and
Yeah.
who knows?
What they did,
astronauts from
it's all
wires.
fake. It was done by Kubrick, but he insisted they do it on location.
Yeah.
To make it more real.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. We'll have to agree to disagree on that. But see, I'm the kind I love stories. I don't care if it's true or not. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. That's another thing you learn on the farm, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Cool.
All good stories have some truth.
Yeah.
But if you're not exaggerating a story, you're not trying hard enough to tell a good story.
Right.
You got to add a little bit of embellishment.
Yeah.
And
the best stories are where you don't really know where the truth ends.
Yeah.
And the lie picks up.
Yeah. If you're just telling fact for fact,
Yeah.
you're not hanging on to any,
and no one's listening.
no one's hanging on to your every word.
No.
Exactly.
Well, and then I went down the hallway and I turned a little bit to the left first, and then right, and then left, and then I saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the
checked
worst
out.
when people are adding details that are
Yeah, we've all had teachers
like you're trying to
that.
add details to a story. No, we don't care about these
Yeah.
details.
Come on, give me some
I was
bullshit. I'll
wearing
pay
an
attention.
orange
Yeah.
shirt with a pink stripe. Now.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting, man. I appreciate what you're doing and the farming. Like, I genuinely do. Like, don't think what you do is insignificant.
I appreciate
think
it.
that local food production is huge. It's something that we're very passionate about, and I think that what you're doing with the comedy stuff is important too. So,
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting mix that was probably unexpected when you look at my career paths. It's farmer by
great.
day and comedian by night, but it's
I like to eat and I like to laugh.
Well, there we go. So
There you go.
and yeah, so it was exciting when you said you're gonna have try and do like comedians.
No, we're
on
not
this
going to
pod-
try and do.
You're gonna get.
We're
We're
gonna
gonna do an open mic, and you're gonna have comics on a
That's
podcast.
right.
And if you ever want to get into the nitty gritty of comedy talk, and you're having a comic on here, if you want somebody else to hop on and chime in, I'd do that too. Because
we're playing Dan and the guys are coming down sometime. I think in October. We're playing the night. We're trying to find a night where we can do the show.
Yeah.
And get a little bit drunk, come in, do a podcast,
Sure.
and then have them
Do
crash.
a live stream.
Have them crash at the Airbnb after,
fun.
so they don't have to drive back to the city. So we're trying to line up a night to do that.
Sweet.
And get a few more mics and
Yeah.
be chaos.
I think we could get something going.
I
here.
think so.
Yeah. Open mic is the start.
Yeah.
So we pick a night some month and once a month and get it going, and
Let's
I
do
can
it.
pop on and host or whatever you want.
So by the time this launches, we're gonna have a date.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
When's this coming out?
Well, that's the first date they got to pick.
Okay.
Probably a couple days, a few days.
Couple days.
Oh, yeah.
That's
A few days a few days is long enough for us to figure out when we can do it, right?
Well, I'll go home and rack my brain on all the stupid shit I said and worry about it until it comes out.
Just enough to edit it, and we'll get it up, and
then I'll listen
off
to
the
it and I'll
races,
mute my voice and listen to you guys talk.
Oh, we're not letting you edit.
No, I just meant once it comes out. Yeah, I'll just wouldn't even know where to start.
Good. Awesome. Well, thank you,
Well, thanks
man.
for having me. This
Cass.
is a lot of fun. Yeah,
Thank you, buddy. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe, or if you'd like to support us, please visit Roof Hound Brewing Company at 573 Main Street, Kingston, or buy our product wherever it's available, including our Foolishly Optimistic IPA at your local NSLC. Thank you.